If you're looking for a free resource on self-publishing that guides you through all the important steps from start to finish, then this video is for you. I've published more than 15 books at this point as a self-published author, and I've been doing this for 8 years now and absolutely loving it. And I've made so many videos on this channel trying to share with you everything that I learn along the way, but they're not really in any particular order. And a lot of times I get comments like, hey, can you do a video on this, when I've actually already done it? So I felt like, why not string all these videos together, the most valuable ones, in order so that you could follow through on how to self-publish from start to finish. There are 15 steps total and over 6 hours of footage that I was going through. So I decided to break them down into 3 specific videos. It's gonna look like this. Part 1 will be linked below if you missed it, and it covered creating a book release budget so you can actually make money after publishing. Number 2, creating a book release timeline and choosing your release date. Number 3, how to title your book, plus series titles as well. Number 4, choosing your author name or your pen name. Number 5, writing a strong book description that will actually sell books. Number 6, finding, hiring, and working with editors. And number 7, the do's and don'ts for a cover design that your target readers will love. Part 2 is actually a compilation video that I already put together and published back in 2023, all about how to format your book. It covers a lot of things that most authors don't even know you need to know, such as an introduction to formatting, the 10 basic standard formatting rules, what to include for your front and back matter, choosing the size of your book and how to resize if you need to, choosing the font size and style, as well as how to use the style pane in Microsoft Word, adding images like your author photo or maybe other books that you've written in your backlist, adding fancy chapter headers, and then how to put all of that together in a quick summary to show you just how easy it really is. Part 2 will be linked below for you to watch whenever you're ready to start formatting, or you can even watch it sooner than that and get an idea of what's ahead. Part 3 is this video you're watching now, and it will cover how and why you might want to set up a pre-order for your book, how to upload your book to multiple print-on-demand companies for both print books and ebooks, including companies like Kindle Direct Publishing, INGRAMSPARK, and Draft to Digital, a breakdown on something called ISBN numbers, what they are, if you need them, and where to get them, how to order a proof copy, aka a test copy of your book, before you press publish so you can see if it looks good, how to proofread your book effectively, how to submit your final book file so that there are no errors, and of course we'll also talk about copyright really quick and chat about if you need it and how to do that if you'd like to copyright your book. Out of these 15 steps, there are 5 that I have never done a video on before, so you are going to get a ton of brand new content from me. And because these videos are so long, I promise I will put chapters below so you can kind of skip around if you need to and always come back to things. If you're like, I just need to rewatch that again, you can rewatch as many times as you need. All right, let's start with why authors do pre-orders and exactly how do you do them if you are a self-published author. If you clicked on this video, then you want to know more about pre-orders and why authors do them and how do authors do them. So we're gonna talk about all of it. I'm gonna share from my perspective what I see as the pros and the cons of doing a pre-order and why I think personally that they're really, really valuable. I'm gonna try to give you a really balanced view and understand the why behind my decisions in case your why might be different. But let's get into it because I'm very excited. There's obviously a lot of factors in a pre-order, but I think that it boils down to 2 things. Either authors want to focus on making more money and they do a longer pre-order, or there are authors who want to try to make a bestsellers list, in which case they might avoid a pre-order or do a very short pre-order. So I promise I will break this down as much as I can. We're going to get into it. What do I mean when I say that a shorter pre-order or skipping them can help you make a bestsellers list? Well, I have not made a bestsellers list, although that would be the coolest thing ever. But essentially, those lists, like the New York Times bestseller, the USA Today bestseller, they come out, I think it's on Sunday and Monday, I forget which one's which. And so those lists are tracking all of your pre-orders on the day of release, except Amazon, because Amazon, for whatever reason, at least right now, from my understanding, is calculating pre-orders as they come in. And so, for example, let's just use a really simple number like 100. If you have 100 pre-orders on Barnes & Noble, they're gonna count all 100 sales on release day. If you have 100 pre-order sales on Amazon that trickle in, you know, 1 sale per day, then you're gonna get like 1 sale on release day for that particular day. All the other ones will have been counted in the past. They'll be past sales. They won't fit within the week that time frame that the bestseller lists are looking at for how many sales. So bestseller lists are looking for the bestsellers, aka the most books sold. And therefore, if you have a longer pre-order, you could sell more books. You could actually sell as many as a bestsellers list might require, but Amazon is going to count them throughout the pre-order time frame, not through that 1 week for the release. Does that make sense? I feel like I didn't explain that super well, so I would suggest looking into it if you want to know more about bestsellers lists. I'm going to actually link Courtney's channel below from the Courtney Project, because she has a video all about this where she really breaks it down, and she has made the USA Today bestsellers list, so she is an authority. I am not. That is an option. However, I don't think it's a very good option for a brand new indie author, or even an author with 4, 5, or 6 books. I feel like you have to be really established before you consider even trying to make a list, because you have to sell thousands of books to make a bestsellers list. And even in traditional publishing, not every book is going to sell thousands. That's a pretty steep number. It's not to say it's not possible, because it is, and it's gonna happen. I'm excited for it. I mean, there is a reason, you guys, there is a reason that I create merch that says stuff like this, because I would love to make a bestsellers list, but I still want to be reasonable and logical. I also want to have a long-lasting career, and honestly, there's so many more things that are important than making a list. A list is just an exciting dream, versus actually having an awesome career requires making money. So that's why I lean the other way towards having a pre-order and having a longer pre-order, because it will help you in the long run to have more sales. It's really simple. The more you talk about your book, the more people might consider buying, and the longer pre-order is, the more chances you have to talk about your book. So I have personally done pre-orders for a couple months. I even tried not doing a pre-order once with my friend Mandy when we co-released a book together. But these days I'm trying longer pre-orders, and when I say longer, I mean longer for indie, like 6 months, but you could even do up to a year on, I think, all platforms now. KDP used to only allow you to do 3-month pre-orders for their ebook, but they now have extended that to a year to match all the other vendors. So you could potentially do even longer if you wanted to through INGRAMSPARK or something like that, but your pre-order can be as long or as short as you want it to be, and that's where we need to talk about some of the other pros and cons besides those 2 biggest ones, because one of the biggest cons to a pre-order is that it can really be stressful for authors if their book is not done. I have experienced this, and yes, if you absolutely had to, you could push your pre-order out, but if you do that on Amazon, you risk losing your pre-order privileges for an entire year. So it does have consequences. And not only that, but even on the other vendors where they let you do that, you're still disappointing readers, letting them down. It's something that if it absolutely had to happen, you have that option, but it's not something to take lightly. And so I would encourage you, if you're somebody who works well on a deadline, to consider pre-order. But if deadlines stress you out and you find that you often don't make them and you feel like you might let your readers down, then you could do a launch page where you gather up all of your readers' information and you email them when the book comes out. Or even just use your newsletter and encourage people, say, hey, sign up for my newsletter if you want to know about new releases. I've got something in the works and I will email you when it releases. So that is an option. You could also encourage people to follow your Amazon page, because I believe Amazon emails everybody who follows an author on the release day of a book, and you could encourage them to follow you on BookBub because they do the same thing. And I think also Goodreads, if I remember right. So you have some other options out there if you really don't want to do a pre-order. Or you could do a shorter one where, say, you finish the book and you give yourself just a 1-month pre-order and you know it's done, you're good to go, but you still want to take advantage of some of the benefits of a pre-order, which is honestly that you're just able to talk about your book more, build up the hype more, and make more sales. So I personally think pre-orders are so valuable, but I also think that every author needs to find their sweet spot where it feels good for them and it's not too stressful. So for me personally, what I have found is the best thing is to figure out roughly when I would completely finish my book, you know, worked with an editor, worked with beta readers, did all my self edits, did my proofread, and it's fully done. And then I like to tack on 2 more months as a buffer period because things go wrong. And that buffer period helps me remove stress while still committing to a date, telling readers this book is coming out. I'm gonna do this. I promise you it will arrive. And I have never missed a pre-order yet, although there were some times before I implemented that buffer period where it got really stressful. So that's what I personally recommend, but you gotta do what works for you, and you might have to experiment a little bit. But then my second tip would actually be to utilize a pre-order when you put out a book by putting a pre-order to the next book in the back. This requires some advanced planning. So like, for example, when I put out The Stolen Kingdom, that was on pre-order, and then when it published, I had put out a pre-order to the next book, The Jenny Key. And when that published, I had in the back a pre-order to The Cursed Hunter. In the back of The Cursed Hunter, when that published, I had a pre-order to The Enchanted Crown. And when The Enchanted Crown comes out, I don't actually have my next book written. So I'm going to put a call to action in the back to sign up for my newsletter to get access to a short story for Gideon instead. So little things like this, whenever you're able to take advantage of a pre-order, I always recommend to take advantage of it, because like I said, our goal is to make a sustainable career, and to do that we have to sell books, and to do that it helps to be able to sell them for a longer period of time. So that's why I personally like to open up a pre-order time frame that's much longer than it used to be. Honestly, I used to try to do the rapid release, and I have a video on that if you want to watch it, which nothing wrong with that, but I have also found that there's nothing wrong with having a longer pre-order window either, and that those can be very beneficial to authors. So it really depends on what you want out of it. Do you want to have something that's stress-free and you put your book out when you're ready to? Maybe then you will utilize a launch page or your newsletter, or even just a shorter pre-order window, like a week, 2 weeks, or a month, or 2 months. Or do you want to have a longer pre-order where you can start talking about it way before it's released and be able to share a link every single time? Like maybe the moment you have a cover reveal, you're able to pair that with a link to go pre-order, and you can already start talking about it way before the book is out and say, guess what? You can buy it if you want to, and you can kind of build the hype that way. Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, I kind of hinted that I have experimented. So I've done all kinds of things, and Mandy and I, for our Marketing for Authors series, we actually tried not doing a pre-order, and we tried doing the launch page that I told you guys about, where we gathered emails instead, and we emailed people on release day. And Mandy and I actually realized after we did that experiment with book 1 in the marketing series, How Your Book Sells Itself, we ended up going back to pre-orders for book 2 and book 3, and we will for future books as well, hint hint, because we decided that looking at the variables for us, having a longer pre-order was really valuable. It allowed us to sell more books going forward, and we were capable of sticking to that deadline, and we actually, both of us, really enjoy having a deadline. It kind of keeps us going, or at least it keeps me going, because otherwise I could just stretch a book out forever. So that's how to do pre-orders, but then let's talk about where you can do pre-orders, because it is actually different. So if you want to publish wide, meaning outside of Amazon, to places like Barnes & Noble and Kobo and Apple Books and what else? Indigo, you can use companies like Draft to Digital for ebooks, which I have a video on that. Then you could use INGRAMSPARK for your paperback and hardcover needs. I would not recommend ebook personally. I have a video on that as well. Those companies allow at least a year for pre-order, if not more. They allow you to basically set whatever date that you want. But when it comes to KDP, which is a company owned by Amazon, if you don't know, and I have a video on that as well, there are a few restrictions. One of them, though, was removed. Like I said, it used to be you could only do a 3-month pre-order window, but now they've extended it to allow you to do as far as a year out. And then the other restriction, which is unfortunate, and I hope that they change this as well, is that they only offer pre-orders for ebooks and not for paperbacks. And so who knows what might happen in the future. I hope to be able to do an update very soon and say it's changed. You can now do paperbacks, because that would change a lot of things for me. But right now, what I personally do is I use INGRAMSPARK for my paperback and hardcover pre-orders, and then I use KDP for ebook pre-orders on Amazon, and Draft to Digital for my pre-orders wide on those other companies like Barnes & Noble and Apple Books and so on. So that's why I personally do pre-orders, and where I do them Let's talk about how to do pre-orders for print books, not ebooks. I don't want you to be confused because it's actually really easy to do pre-orders for ebooks. You can go to Kindle Direct Publishing, Apple, Barnes & Noble Press, Kobo, Draft to Digital, Google Play, probably a bunch of other places. Technically, INGRAMSPARK does ebooks. All of that is great for indie authors because ebooks are really a big seller for most of us. I would say more than print books usually, but that doesn't mean that we should just discount print books. And of course, there are lots of great places where you can publish print books. The main one that's coming to mind is Amazon's KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing again. And then INGRAMSPARK is another big one that a lot of indie authors use, but there's also Barnes & Noble Press, a company called Lulu. I think Draft to Digital is technically beta testing print books now. I don't think they've gotten that far yet, and I definitely haven't used them. But today I wanted to talk about the two companies that I use not just to print books, but to do pre-orders on print books, because my favorite company, Kindle Direct Publishing, or KDP, does not actually offer pre-orders for their print copies, aka paperbacks and hardcovers. They do for ebooks, which is where a lot of people get confused because they're like, wait, can you or can't you? I don't understand. You can put an ebook on pre-order, no problem. You cannot put a print book up for pre-order. So I've got my print copy of The Secret Gift up for pre-order as an ebook on Amazon right now, but you won't see an option to buy the paperback until release day or a few days before if you're interested. And that is because I'm actually testing out a different option this time around. So that's what this video is going to be about. My goal in this video is just to describe these two options that I've personally used and share a little bit of my experience with them and whether or not I would recommend using them and in what circumstances. And then in my next video, I'll do more of a breakdown of the pros and cons of each company and my full experience and all the things that are unfortunately frustrating with both of them. Neither of them are perfect, but the first one that I have used for, gosh, like 6, 7, 8 books, Evelyn's Number, Pearl's Number, Stolen Kingdom, Ginny Key, Curse Hunter, Enchanted Crown, and then technically the hardcovers for those 4, like 10 plus times. Is called INGRAMSPARK. I have a video all about how to upload to INGRAMSPARK, which I need to update because it's slightly out of date now, but it's still helpful. And for the longest time, this was what I considered my only option. Yes, there were other things out there. I think Lulu's been around for a while, but the short version, without going into all the pros and cons, is that nothing else really quite measured up. INGRAMSPARK is definitely dominating right now. They offer hardcovers with dust jackets, and there are a couple competitors, but that plus the fact that they offer pre-orders for print books has kind of set them as the guy you gotta work with, even though you don't want to get certain things done in publishing, specifically pre-orders for print books. But this time around, for The Secret Gift right here, for the first time ever, I am also trying something new called Barnes & Noble Press. Funny story, I'll talk more about this tomorrow, but supposedly, rumor has it that Barnes & Noble Press actually uses INGRAMSPARK as their printer, so the books are like the exact same quality, and I haven't noticed anything different in that aspect, where INGRAMSPARK allows you to do wide distribution and international distribution of your pre-orders. So for example, I've had my books on Amazon for print pre-orders before, which is what confused readers in the past. Now on Barnes & Noble, I have distribution only through Barnes & Noble. So they are not going to upload my book to their competitor, Amazon. So the print pre-order is not there. And they are not able to ship as internationally as Amazon either. So my options for my international readers is not as great. I'm just being real with you guys. That said, my workaround is to have the pre-order on Barnes & Noble, but then on release day, I still put the book up on Amazon myself directly through Amazon, and I get that international distribution there, and my book is in both places, but you just can't have the pre-order on Amazon. So I guess the real question, and I want to ask you guys what you think as well, is how important are pre-orders, right? Because I've gone back and forth, and I think a lot of indie authors do, a lot of readers do as well. I feel like as I'm listening to traditional publishing, a lot of them are talking about how much harder it has been for them to get readers to pre-order. And when you're in traditional publishing, pre-orders are extremely important because it's telling your publisher if readers are interested in the book, how much more marketing they should put into it. From what I gather, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be a big factor in whether or not a book is considered successful. Whereas when you're in indie publishing, it's just the beginning, you guys. Just the beginning. And as frustrating as it is mentally to not have as much access to pre-orders, you have to realize that a book's release day is just a day, and it has so much of a lifetime afterwards, especially if you put time and energy and effort into marketing and continuing to talk about your book. It's not done on release day by any means. So I think pre-orders have less value than they used to. That's my personal opinion, but I do think they are valuable for readers who might not remember to come back and order your book later. So ultimately you have to figure out what you really want, because yes, INGRAMSPARK has the biggest reach, so to speak. You can actually get your book into quite a few stores. Here's their list of print distribution partners specifically, and you can see there are quite a few, as well as a lot of ebook distribution partners as well. And that's all well and good, but if a reader's not actually going onto a Target website to get your book, then does it really matter if you have it there? You know what I'm saying? One of the best ways that you could find out if your readers actually care if you have a pre-order or not could be to ask them. So if you have social media, you could do a poll. For example, on Instagram, I could say, do you typically pre-order books? Yes or no? And then that could give me an understanding of, well, my audience probably wouldn't pre-order anyway. It's not a big deal. But capturing your audience is probably the #1 reason that I personally see pre-orders being valuable. So when you're talking about your book before release and you're just bringing up cool things, you're like, oh, here's the tropes. It's a young adult fantasy. It's got fairy tale inspiration from the evil queens in Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and Beauty and the Beast. It's the origin story of Jezebel from the Stolen Kingdom series, etc., etc. When you're talking about it like this, you really want to be able to take advantage of the fact that that reader is excited and they actually want to read that story, and give them a link to potentially buy it right then and there, because people are impulse buyers. We all are. And if we get excited about a book, in that moment we have an opportunity to buy it, we might actually buy it. But if we don't have that opportunity and the author's like, hey, this will be out in 2 months or something, come back then, I'm just going to be honest with you guys, unless I'm obsessed with that book, I'm probably going to forget. And that's how I feel like a lot of readers are. So that's why pre-orders in general are so valuable. But then the second question is, does it have to be print or can it just be ebook pre-orders? And I think again, it comes down to two things: what's typical for your genre and what's typical for your specific audience. So when I poll my audience, a lot of people are like me, where they're like, no, I gotta read a physical book. I don't read ebooks. I've tried, I have stuff on my Kindle, but do I actually read them? No. And your audience might be totally different. You might have an audience who's like 100% ebooks, I love them, or maybe audiobooks, I don't know. And you might be fine. You might be like, okay, I think my audience can handle an ebook, no problem. That's what I'm going to go with. But it also depends on the genre as well. So young adult fantasy in particular, readers tend to prefer physical books as well. And that's just kind of like a genre standard, versus I think I've heard in the past that romance tends to sell quite a bit more ebooks than physical books. And so again, it depends on the genre and your specific audience. If it comes down to it that you need to do a print pre-order, you can look into INGRAMSPARK, Barnes & Noble. Also, I believe Lulu. In the future, look into Draft Digital, which potentially could start to become a competitor at some point, hopefully soon. And since we're saying wishful things, I hope Amazon also becomes a competitor and starts doing print pre-orders very soon. I'm just going to say it until I'm blue in the face and see if they ever actually do that. I think those are the main 4 that I'm aware of personally for print pre-orders. At this point in my writing career, I have self-published my book at 7 different places. You might be shocked to hear, I know I would have been shocked hearing this when I first started out, that I am actually currently publishing my latest book with 6 of those places. So in this video, I am going to break down what each of them do, why I chose them. But before I do that, I just want to make it really clear, you do not have to use all these companies that I use. And I will again break down why I use them so you can decide if it's a good fit for you, few, or if you just want to do like one or two of them. When I first started out, just to give you a little bit of history, I used a company called CreateSpace that no longer exists, and I was only there. And that company was bought out by Amazon's KDP, or Kindle Direct Publishing, and that is also the company that I mainly used for a very long time. That was like my go-to place. It still is. It's my favorite, maybe because I started there, or maybe because they're awesome. This is not sponsored. I just really think they're the most user-friendly, most helpful, best royalties, and a lot of other good stuff, but we'll get into that. So I'm going to walk you through the companies that I use one by one in order of kind of when I started using them, but just to give you an upfront list so you know what we're getting into. We have Kindle Direct Publishing, again, INGRAMSPARK, Draft2Digital, Google Play, Kobo, Apple, and Barnes & Noble Press. Just a couple. If you're feeling overwhelmed, don't worry. I actually have this video in the past where I uploaded to just the first 3 companies, and if you want to start there or even just start with one of them, you absolutely can. All 3 of those companies, you could start with just one of them. I know authors who just publish at KDP or just publish at INGRAMSPARK or just self-publish through Draft2Digital. But again, I'm going to give you a breakdown of all 7 of these companies and why I chose to work with them, and if I'm still working with them, which, like I said, most of them I am right now. All right, number 1 is Kindle Direct Publishing. Obviously, they are the best. I've said this already in this video, but I've just continued to work with them because for the most part, again, caveat that no company is perfect, for the most part, they have the best customer service. They treat their readers pretty well. They solve issues when they come up. You can publish ebooks, paperback, and now, most recently, hardcovers. I have a video about how to upload to KDP, as well as a video, actually like 5 videos, on testing out the hardcover, which is still pretty new as of recording this. And you can put your ebooks on pre-order at this point all the way up to a year out, which Amazon has also expanded. It used to be 3 months, now it's a year, so much more comparable to other ebook vendors at this point. Things that it does not have, though, is a pre-order option for the print books. Their hardcover does not have dust jackets, so when you do a hardcover through them, it's beautiful. I love how mine turned out. I'll show you a visual here of my collector's edition that I did through them, but normally readers do expect to see a dust jacket over a hardcover, aka this right here. So KDP only prints this, like whatever you have on the cover, that's what they get, versus the other companies that do hardcovers typically have a dust jacket like this. Another great reason that I use Kindle Direct Publishing is that they have really awesome royalties for their authors. So that just means the amount of money that's going into your pocket out of everything. Now, I'll put an image on the screen here to show you an example of what their royalties are. They're very competitive, if not one of the best, I would say, currently for indie authors. And so while you will still be shocked to see that like on a $15 book, you might make like $3 or $4, for example, you still get a pretty decent cut compared to some of the other companies. Last but not least, KDP has a program called KDP Select, which is on the author side. It just means that you're making your ebooks exclusive to Amazon. Print books don't matter. It's fine for them to be what's called wide, as in more places than just Amazon, but you're promising that your ebooks will be exclusive to Amazon. You won't have them anywhere else. You won't have them as a free book on your website, etc., etc. And that puts them into what the readers know as Kindle Unlimited, which you probably recognize if you use Amazon at all, because Kindle Unlimited is where readers just pay a certain amount per month to read as many books as they want in that program. So again, to get in this program, you do have to make your ebook exclusive to Amazon and not publish it anywhere else, but there are some benefits to that for sure. And a lot of indie authors actually do use this program and keep their books exclusively on Amazon, or at least their ebooks. In case you're wondering, because I'm sure some of you will ask, I do have some of my books enrolled in KDP Select. My first 2 books that I ever published, Evelyn's Number and Pearl's Number, I believe are in there. And then also my nonfiction books in the Marketing for Authors series that I co-write with Mandy Lynn, we put those in Kindle Unlimited / KDP Select as well. That said, I still don't know that much about it, besides that you get paid based on pages read versus an actual set and dried fee for downloading the book, if that makes sense. I'm going to direct you to go to their website and just read more about it if you want to know all the details, because I feel like I wouldn't explain it perfectly. For me, at least, my bestsellers are the YA fantasy, so I tend to track and watch those sales more just because I understand it more and I don't totally get the pages read. But if your books are good and make readers read all the way through, then you could potentially get paid a very good amount that way as well. The second company that I ever worked with is called INGRAMSPARK, and I will put put this uploading video below as well if you want to know how to upload there. And it would be known as what's called an aggregator, meaning that they're not like any bookstore themselves, but they publish to many other bookstores. I'll put a list on the screen here so you can see some of the print distribution and some of the ebook distribution. They have a really wide reach for distribution, and they also publish internationally as well. So just in general, like this is probably the biggest way to get your books out to the public. But just a little note here, because when readers see like, oh my gosh, my book's gonna be in Target and in Walmart and in Barnes & Noble, like INGRAMSPARK offers your book to those vendors like as an open, like if they want to buy it, they can. And for most of them, I believe they do put the book on their website. So like my books are all on Barnes & Noble website, they're all on Target's website, etc., etc. But that does not mean that those companies will actually buy stock of your book and actually invest in you unless there is a high demand for it, or maybe you do a book signing like I have in the past, for example, and I'll link those videos below if you want to know more about that. So yes, they have wider distribution than Amazon, meaning they offer the option to these other companies to buy your book if they want to, if there's demand for it. And readers could go onto those websites like the Barnes & Noble website or the Target website and get your book there, as well as on Amazon. You could go to all the places in both ebook and paperback and also hardcover, and they do have the dust jackets here that I was telling you about. So this book right here is printed through INGRAMSPARK because Amazon does not have that option. So this is an INGRAMSPARK book right here. I should just put them like that because I keep using those as examples. So this is an Amazon book, this is an INGRAMSPARK book, but they both print very good quality books for the most part. At this point, it's probably going to shock you to hear that this is the one company that I am currently not working with. Like I left this book and the rest of the books in the series up on the website because I paid to put them there, which is a little hint at one of the reasons I do not like using this company personally. But when it came to The Secret Gift, I decided to try other things and not use INGRAMSPARK because of some reasons that I'm frustrated with them. The main one being that they're the only company I know of that charges authors a fee to upload your book, and it is like $49 or $50. It is a large fee, especially considering all the other companies are free to publish through. So you do have to pay to publish books through INGRAMSPARK. On top of that, every time you want to update the files, then you have to pay a fee again. If you want to update the interior or the cover, it's $25 each. And if you want to do both, then it's another $50. So you could potentially spend $100 minimum just to publish your book. And you might be like, well, why don't you just wait until the book's done and then it's just one upload fee, and $50 is not great, but at least it's just one time. Well, the reason is that typically I would use INGRAMSPARK for pre-order purposes. So they do offer ebook pre-orders and print pre-orders, which I kind of mentioned before is hard to do. This video is complicated, but I can do this. I can do this. So just picture with me, I'm going to use this book as an example, even though I didn't put it on there. So let's say I'm ready to put this book up for pre-order, but it's actually not finished. I've got maybe just the front cover, but the back needs some work, and the interior needs at the minimum proofreading, but potentially like another round of edits as well. Now, there are people who have commented in the past and been like, why don't you just finish your book? You're crazy. No, this is normal to put a book up for pre-order before it's done. It's done in both self-publishing and traditional publishing all the time. I would say like 99% of books are put on pre-order before they're done. So what I would do in this case, if I was working with INGRAMSPARK and this book wasn't done, is I would upload the front cover with like a placeholder back cover, right? And that's called the dummy file. And then I would upload some kind of interior that again was not completed, and that again is usually called a dummy file. So there would be those two placeholder files on the website because INGRAMSPARK won't let you set up a pre-order without some kind of files. And that it just gets them more money, honestly, like because you have to then go back when you're done with the book and update the cover, update the interior, or maybe just one. If your cover designer happened to get the cover done perfectly and you don't have to change it, you still most likely have to change the interior and pay at least another $25 to update that. And then let's say that you order a proof copy of your final book, you proofread it, something that I like to do, and I'll share that video below if you want to know more. I think it's very important to look for any last minute errors, which are very common again. and you might find even just one little error, just one typo would be all it would take to have to then re-upload a file and pay another $25. If that wasn't enough, there's also the customer service aspect. Now, INGRAMSPARK used to have a telephone number. Now they have nothing except email, probably because of 2020. But honestly, the customer service gives me such a headache. I struggle with working with them in any capacity because there's so many issues. And I did this video that just came out as well in this series about a lot more details about INGRAMSPARK and my personal experience. If you want to know more, I'll link that below for you to watch after this video. But I would just say I'm not working with them because all those benefits are outweighed by the negatives, and I wanted to look into other options. I'm going to save the option / replacement that I'm using for INGRAMSPARK for last and move on to the third company that I started working with as I moved through my indie author career, and that is Draft2 Digital, which currently has just started adding print books, but it used to be ebooks only, and it was wide distribution, meaning including Amazon, but also Apple, Kobo, Barnes & Noble. It used to have Google Play, but it doesn't anymore. They have library distribution, which is very cool. And so this is, again, similar to INGRAMSPARK, what's known as an aggregator, meaning they are not the vendor. You're not uploading directly to a vendor, but they work with all of these other companies and have good connections, and you can just upload one time for your book to get out to all these different places. And it saves you a lot of time, saves you a lot of effort, a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, I can tell you that. And they just take a small percentage, which I personally think is worth it because they save you, again, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of confusion. And it's just very nice when you're starting out. If you're like, you know what, I don't want to figure out how to work with all these companies. I just want to upload to one place. Draft2 Digital will do the work for me, and they will, give me the money from one company. So it can be a great opportunity. Those three companies are what I worked with for a very long time. I like to go direct to KDP so that I could see a lot more statistics on Amazon, my sales graphics, my pre-order numbers. I wanted to do advertising direct with them and stuff like that, which now I think you can do whether you're direct on their platform or not. INGRAMSPARK I used for my print books, specifically for pre-orders, because again, that was the only place that I knew of that I could do that. And I would publish wide, meaning Amazon and all the other companies. And then Draft2 Digital, I added so that my ebook could be wide because I did not like using INGRAMSPARK for ebooks. I never actually have used INGRAMSPARK for ebooks because Draft2 Digital was where I was able to make my ebooks wide. And that was a great opportunity. But then I added Google Play as my fourth publishing company because Google Play used to be on Draft2 Digital as one of the many places, but they stopped working with Draft2 Digital and it made it so you had to upload your book directly to Google Play if you wanted your book on Google Play. Now, what I've heard is that there are actually a lot of readers on Google Play, but I am still pretty brand new to this website, and so I have just recently gotten my books on there. I just have the 4 books in the Stolen Kingdom there, and then The Secret Gift is now on there as well. But the benefits here is that it is ebook distribution to a lot of readers, potentially, if you can figure out how to access those readers. Google Play has a pretty good reach, as far as I understand. They do not do print books, but they do have some really cool features, like they allow you to have a 5-chapter, I think, or no, is it percentage? I think it's a certain percentage of your book is available as a sample before the book comes out. So it could be a really cool place to send your readers and be like, hey, check out my book here. They also have some other cool marketing options, which I haven't used yet, so I'm trying to picture it. I believe you can send your book for free through this app or through their website. I'm not sure. I would recommend looking into that if you're interested, but it could be a really cool way to send your ARC copies. ARCs are advanced review copies, if you don't know, and I have videos on that as well that I'll link below. But that leads to the 3 newest companies that I'm now working with: Kobo, Apple, and Barnes & Noble. And you might recognize those because those are some of the companies that were in Draft2 Digital. And so what I ended up doing is I kept my book, The Secret Gift, on Draft2 Digital, and I use that for the library access specifically, but also for their formatting tools. If you're curious, Draft2 Digital is awesome for formatting ebooks, and I have my whole formatting series here if you'd like to watch that after this as well, where I kind of dive deeper into that. But otherwise, I wanted to put this book directly to Apple, Kobo, and Barnes & Noble myself because I started learning about all these cool marketing opportunities if you upload it directly to the platform. So So I'll just pop on the screen here some because I haven't fully researched it, but I know Apple has a lot of cool opportunities. Barnes & Noble as well has some really awesome opportunities, and you have to upload your book directly to those platforms to have access to that. So let's back up and I'll just go through them really quickly. Kobo has ebook only. They are, I believe, a little more outside the US. I'm not totally sure. I'm not familiar with this platform yet, but I want to get more familiar with it. They also have a cool sample for reading the book. But right now, I actually messaged Kobo and I was like, what's going on with like the chapter headers being bumped down the page? And they let me know that there's just currently a glitch and they're not really sure what to do about it. So it might not be the best place to send your readers for sample chapters before release, but they do technically have it. If you have a very like clean file without anything fancy at the top, you could probably utilize that as well. Apple is the next place where I have just started uploading my books. I am brand new to it as of a couple months ago, and they are also ebook only. Also have sample chapters where you can send your readers before the release and they can read a good chunk of the book. Actually, in this case, it's kind of cool. You can upload your own file. So let's say that you want to be like one of those publishers who's like, I'm going to give you the first 2 chapters and then I'm going to cut out chapter 3, which has a spoiler, and then I'm going to give you chapter 4 and chapter 5 or something like that. Then you can do that. You can actually like create that file on the back end, upload it to Apple, and that is like your own custom sample of the ebook, which is really cool. Now, compared to Kobo and Google Play and KDP, as far as uploading direct to a vendor that actually sells your books directly through themselves, Apple is definitely more complicated. It's on the more complicated side. You have to download, I think it's called iTunes Producer, and you upload your book through that. And there were a few times where I pressed submit, but it didn't like have everything it needed, so it didn't update, and that still confuses me a little bit. So I would just say this one, I don't know if we were like grading them. I should have said that at the beginning. KDP is definitely level 1 or like level 0. It's the easiest to work with. INGRAMSPARK would be like a level 5 in my opinion. Draft to Digital might be a level 2, just slightly more complicated in like one area, but for the most part, very easy. Kobo would probably be a level 2 as well. It's not too hard to use. Google Play, also level 2. There was just like one thing where I was like uploading the file and it wasn't clear if it worked or not. And then when it comes to Apple would be like a level 4. And then the last one that I'll get into in a second, Barnes & Noble Press, I think would also be a level 5, like INGRAMSPARK in its amount of complicatedness. So let's get into that last one, Barnes & Noble Press, which is my substitute for INGRAMSPARK, in case you're wondering. They have an ebook option for indie authors, but they also have a paperback and hardcover option for indie authors. So similar to INGRAMSPARK, you can get all 3 different formats, and that is pretty rare, honestly. Like I mentioned though, they are definitely on the more complicated side. I would say they're right neck and neck with INGRAMSPARK as far as like, what do I need? What files? Like, how do I upload? Oh no, that didn't work, and that kind of vibe. You will eventually make your way through it. They have good descriptions. I feel like both companies have been updating their websites and getting a little bit smoother with explaining to you what you need to do and in what order. But Barnes & Noble does not have an uploading fee. Compared to INGRAMSPARK with their $50 minimum uploading fee, Barnes & Noble, you can publish your books for free. And when I first started working with them, I thought this was like unlimited uploads, you know, just like KDP, you know, just fix it whenever you need to. It's not like there's a limit on it, but it is very slow. So something to keep in mind when you do your upload, it could take it like a few days, maybe a week, maybe even 2 weeks to implement those changes. So for example, I just ordered 5 author copies after I had put in my final proofread completed book, and I'm pretty sure that I'm actually going to get ARC copies in the mail, because after I submitted the order and I got the email that the books were on the way, later I got an email saying your book has been updated. So that is unfortunate, but again, it's pretty comparable to INGRAMSPARK, which is also very slow, in case I didn't mention that. So slow to do approval processes, slow to make changes. Those 2 companies are definitely the slowest, but again, they are the 2 that have print pre-orders, and so they have a little bit more, sort of weird to say this, but it's kind of like they have more power, so they can kind of do what they want. As of recording this video in 2022 and going into 2023, I am currently working with KDP, Draft to Digital, Apple, Kobo, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble Press, and I have not been working with INGRAMSPARK for this book and most likely for future books going forward. I don't know that for a fact though, because like I said, INGRAMSPARK's distribution in particular, I just can't find anything comparable to, because in case I didn't make this clear, Barnes & Noble Press, while they do have print pre-orders, I have my book up on their website for a print pre-order. They unfortunately don't have nearly the same distribution because of course they don't want to work with their competitors. They're going to leave it on their website. They want the sales, so they are not going to put my print pre-order on Amazon or Target or Walmart or Book Depository, etc., all the places where INGRAMSPARK would. But my workaround for that, and again, this is the reason that I'm attempting this instead of working with INGRAMSPARK, is to do the pre-orders on Barnes & Noble, where it is an exclusive pre-order basically, and it's a little more limited in shipping. It's only, I think, US and Canada. But on release day, I am going to publish The Secret Gift in paperback there as well, and then it will have the wide distribution on Amazon, which I believe also does have the option for booksellers to buy it, and it is international and just is going to have a lot wider distribution once it's published there on release day. So let me know in the comments if you would like kind of a wrap up after I officially do that, after this book is published on Amazon and I've experienced the full pre-order on Barnes & Noble. But I will say that besides the distribution, which does bum me out a little bit because I have a lot of readers being like, hey, I'm in like the UK or the Netherlands, or Cyprus actually was a cool one. Shout out to that reader. And I can't pre-order the book, and I just have to be like, I'm so sorry, the pre-order's exclusive, but it will be available on release day. So that has been a downside, and I just don't know going forward yet what I'm going to do, but I think I will probably try keeping this whole series as Barnes & Noble pre-orders and Amazon on release day, and then see how I feel after that as far as whether or not I come back to INGRAMSPARK. I just would really like to see them improve their customer service a lot, and I would also really like to see them dump that uploading fee because it's really stupid and it's taking advantage of indie authors. Honestly, there's a lot of indie authors who don't know what they're doing when they start out. They make mistakes and they have to pay for it, and I just think that's unfortunate. So I hope that helped you. Again, just to clarify, you don't have to upload your book to all these places at once. You could start with one place and expand to some of the others over time if you want to. There's no pressure to try to do everything at once. I am in my 5th year of being a self-published author, almost 6th year. I'm about to go into year number 6, and this is the first time that I have used all these companies, and I've added them on over the years as I felt comfortable. But I did start out just on KDP, just on one publishing platform when I first started out. So don't feel stressed. You can always come back to this video and refresh if you need to. I hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you guys in the next video in this series. In this video, I'm going to show you how to upload your book to KDP, aka Kindle Direct Publishing, which is Amazon's publishing platform. And I'm going to show you how to publish both an ebook and a paperback. And I'm going to walk you through all the steps. It's super simple. I'm about to set up my ebook for pre-order, so I'm going to show you a real life example of how to do that, and then also how to transfer all that info over to a print copy and connect the two. Now, just keep in mind, you can't actually do pre-orders for the print copies as of the time of recording this video, but maybe that'll change in the future. I don't know, but you can do a pre-order for an ebook, or you could just immediately publish it, whatever works for you. All right, I'm going to jump over and just show you my screen. The first step is to make an account. So if you don't have one already, you can sign up. Otherwise, sign in right here. Once you're logged in, you're going to automatically come to the bookshelf page right here, which if you have uploaded books in the past would show all those books below. We're going to stay on the bookshelf tab for the uploading process, but you could also definitely browse, and I would recommend browsing the reports, community, and marketing tabs, as well as your account at the top where you'll add your tax info to be able to get paid. And also highly recommend checking out the help section. There's so much valuable info here if you browse through the information on the left side. And then of course you can also always contact them if you have questions that aren't answered here in all of their different help categories. But again, we're sticking with the bookshelf today. It's so easy to upload a book. The very first step is, as you can see at the top here, clicking the create button. And before I click that, let me just point out, you could also click the create a book button here and browse some of the other helpful tools and resources that they add for people who are new to KDP. So I'm going to go ahead and click the create button. Just know that this has actually recently been updated. It's pretty cool how they've added everything here. So we're going to focus on the Kindle ebook first, but just know that you can actually pull all the information you enter for ebooks over to the print versions later on, and it's very quick and easy. I'll show you that at the end. And then also keep in mind that they do have the Kindle Vella option currently, as well as a series page option, which I can also show you at at the end of this video. We're going to click Create ebook. To create an ebook, there's only 3 pages you have to fill out. The details page, the ebook content, which is the cover and manuscript, and then the pricing page is the last page before you click Publish. So let's start with the details page. I'm going to walk you through each section really quick. First, we have language. Now, I'm publishing in English, but you can see there are many other options here. That's pretty self-explanatory, so let's move on to the book title. This is something that cannot be changed after the book is published, so just keep that in mind. We are going to publish the 2nd edition of The Secret Gift today, and it did originally have a subtitle, so I'll show you what that would look like here. It was a villain origin story. Now, this is optional, so I may choose to come back and remove this later if I decide to. As long as I haven't pressed the publish button, that's fine. This is not set in stone until we hit publish. The next section is for a series, so if you don't have a series, just skip this step. But if you do have a series, you would click Add Series Details, and then depending on if you have already set it up or not, you would click either New or Existing. Now, I did set mine up, so I would normally click Existing, but if you haven't yet, click Create Series, and then if it's main content, meaning it's like number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, you would click this button. If it's related content, such as a prequel or short story, that's when you would click this button. So click main content, and then go to the series setup and fill that out. But I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's already filled out by clicking existing series, and these are my existing series. So I'm going to go to the Queen's Rise series. This is book 1. It's main content, so I'll click main content, and you can always click edit series details, and then it'll bring you to the series setup page, which will again just ask you some basic questions. This is very self-explanatory, but if you realize that you need to fix the series title name, that would be here. Once you feel like everything looks good with your series, you just go back to your bookshelf, and it's going to show the book that you are currently setting up right here, and you'll go continue setup. A lot of people think like you have to do this all at once. You can always come back to it. You can always scroll to the bottom, save a draft, save your progress, and come back to it. But we're going to go ahead and move on from the series section to edition number. This is optional. Do not enter this unless you have previously published a book. But I'm a good example of I have actually published this book before. So as you can see here, I should be putting the number 2 because this is a 2nd edition. The next section is for the author. So this is going to be where you put your name or your pen name like this. And if you co-authored the book, you would put the co-author right here and their information, or you could also technically include your editor, anybody who did a foreword, your illustrator, your narrator, and so on. Typically, you would only see this for a co-author, an illustrator, or a narrator. I don't usually see the others listed as contributors, but you definitely can if you'd like to. Then the next section is the description. So this is your book description that shows up on Amazon, and I actually saved mine in a Google document. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that in just like this. If it looks a little bit weird with formatting, you can go in and fix it. And as you can see, it already pulled through the bolded information, but you could also add that later on if you needed to, or you could do italicized, underlined, bullet points, and so on. The nice thing about the description is that you can always change this. So if you want to put in a placeholder just to move on to the next page, you definitely can, but make sure that you fill in the final blurb before you click publish. The next section is your publishing rights. And unless you actually did get a public domain work, you should own the copyright for your work. So this box will typically always be checked. But if you have any questions, you can always read their little helpful notes here on the side. And then the following section is your keywords. So there is a lot of help here as well about keywords. And there are some rules that you can click this and read up on. But typically to do this, you're going to think of the type of stuff that people type in the search bar when they're looking for a book like yours. So for example, young adult fairy tale retelling, maybe clean young adult books. I'm just guessing right now, but I would recommend you actually go to Amazon and start typing in the Kindle store bar here to look up what do people search. Fantasy, great. Let's do young adult fantasy books. That's a long tail keyword like this, for example. And even though this does say optional, these are things that help people find your book in the store. So I would highly recommend taking the time to research and fill in all of these. You can also change these at any time. So you can come back to them over time and see if different keywords help you. But for right now, let's move on to categories. And you get 2 categories on Amazon to start. And it will explain to you why these are so important. But think of this like your virtual bookshelf. Like if if you are going to Barnes & Noble to shop for a book, this would be the section of the bookstore where people are going to look for books like yours. So it's really important to get this right. I would recommend browsing these and taking your time to really look through them. You can always close them and check out a different section. You should have a general idea of where to start. Like, I know my book is young adult, so I'm going to start here. But then you're going to see a lot of other categories open up. And again, I really recommend that you browse all of these. I took a lot of time to look through them. Some of them even open up further like this. So mine is actually a fairy tale and folklore type story, and it is a general one. I would call it an adaptation if it was a full retelling, but this one is more general. It's not a full retelling, so it just has a lot of Easter eggs from Snow White. And remember, we get 2 categories. So it's going to show your first category here. And if you ever think, you know what, I don't think this is quite right, you can always click remove. But then I'm going to add a second category, let's say fantasy and magic for now. And this is another one that I recommend you browse and take your time and really make sure that you have the best 2 categories possible. And you'll click save and move on to the age range. Now, I used to think this was required, but as you can see right here, it says optional. And so it's actually better not to fill this in unless you are publishing a book that really does have a specific age range. Like, for example, maybe if it's an elementary school book or a book for a 3-year-old or something like that, it would be very helpful to put that in. But since this is young adult, I'm going to actually skip it because a lot of adults actually read young adult as well, and I want to make sure that this is opened up to everyone. Now, this is one of my favorite sections here at the bottom is the pre-order option. And you could release your book right away if you would like to. You could keep this option checked, but typically I would recommend doing a pre-order. And what I love about this is they've actually opened it up. It used to only be 1, 2, 3 months ahead, but now I believe it's as far as a year out. You'll see right there. So I have a whole year, but I'm going to go ahead and choose the release date that I chose, which is December 5th. And once you've selected a release date, it will actually tell you when you need to submit your final files, which is also extremely helpful. And this little countdown will be linked at the top of every page once you go ahead and confirm your pre-order. All right, that was the details page. Now we're on to the content page, and the first section is your manuscript. And you can always read more about their guidelines and the file types they accept, but the first section is digital rights management. And so this is something that I've done both. I've checked yes, I've checked no, but once the book is published, you can't change it. So whatever you decide to choose here, just make sure that you feel comfortable with it. I typically do enable digital rights management personally, but it's really up to you. Then we come to your actual manuscript file. And this is something that I'm really thankful that they've changed, is that you don't have to have your final file ready if you don't have one. In the past, if you were setting up a pre-order and your book wasn't done, you could upload a dummy file, but that was a little bit risky because I always was worried that that would be the file that would get published. So instead of clicking, yes, I have a file, and uploading your book as it is currently, you can wait till it's done and click, no, I'll upload the file that I want customers to receive later, as long as it's before this deadline that they give you based on your release date. So I have all the way till December 1st to upload my manuscript. The next section is your cover, and I have a whole playlist about book covers. You can watch my DIY playlist if you want to upload a temporary cover. You could actually use their cover creator option right here to make something temporary as well. But as you can see, their options are not great, and so I'm going to click this right here to go back in the top left corner because I personally do not like the options in the cover creator. So I would always recommend uploading a cover you already have. And that's what we're going to do now. I just selected my cover, and it does take a minute for it to upload. See how it says processing, but it will appear here shortly. There you go. It just auto-populated. Look at that. It's gorgeous. And then this next section is your preview. And you can't actually preview it. You can't launch the previewer right now because I didn't upload a manuscript. But once you have uploaded your file, you click yes, you upload your ebook manuscript right here. Then you would want to always click launch previewer and scroll through every page to make sure that it looks really good and it looks the way you wanted it to. But right now, we're going to skip that option and move on to the ISBN, which is the last one on this page. An ISBN number is your International Standard Book Number. And the nice thing is that on Amazon, you don't have to have this. They actually apply what's called an ASIN number, your Amazon Standard International Book Number. But essentially, your ISBN is what I like to think of as your book's fingerprint. And so when it comes to paperbacks and hardcovers, you will need to have an ISBN, but Amazon does offer a free one if you'd like. And you can research ISBNs more if you're interested, but keep in mind that it is optional. So for our ebook, we're actually going to skip it. The publisher is also optional, but I have a publishing company called Grace House Press. It's specifically for my books only. I created it for myself so that I could be my own publisher. So I'm going to enter the company name here because I have one, and then click Save and Continue. All right, we're on the third and final page, which is pricing, but there's actually a couple other things on this page as well before we actually get to the price. So here at the top is KDP Select, and if you are an Amazon reader and you happen to be enrolled in Kindle Unlimited, that's what this is. And so this is the author side right here, KDP Select. So you could opt to enroll your book into KDP Select by clicking this option, and then readers in Kindle Unlimited would be able to get your book through Kindle Unlimited. There's a lot more that you can read up on here. If you want to know how to enroll or just learn more about KDP Select, I would recommend you click those, but I do not enroll my fiction in KDP Select at the moment, so I'm going to leave that box unchecked. Then we have territories. And so if you, say, had a publishing contract with a publishing company who owned some of the rights to your book, you might still be able to publish to other territories outside of where your publisher is publishing. If you have the rights to all territories, I would recommend clicking all territories. If you want to know more, again, they have tons of information here where you can click these boxes if you want to know more. Then your primary marketplace, this is typically where you live. So I'm in the US, which means Amazon.com, but you have a bunch of other options here if you think your primary readers would be in a different Amazon marketplace. And now we're finally at pricing, royalty, and distribution. And you can see this is a very big section here because we have a lot of different Amazon stores. What we're going to do is start at the very top with an important thing, your royalties. This means how much money you make from the books. Amazon gives you two options for ebooks at the moment, 35% or 70%. Always check 70% if it's an option. You want to be making the most you possibly can on your book. But there are a couple instances where you won't be allowed to check that 70% option, and that is if your book is under $2.99 or over $9.99. So let's give you an example. We'll start with $2.99 and click enter, and it will give you a breakdown of your royalties. So first of all, for an ebook, there's a delivery fee, and this is a very high number. Once we upload a manuscript, it typically goes down quite a bit. I've seen it more around 10 cents typically for a typical book and a typical file that Amazon is used to. And we are at 70% royalties. That's the box we checked up here. So it's going to tell you you're going to make $1.59 per book right now, but that's because all they have to base that on is your price that you set here. If the delivery fee goes down, your royalty will go up a little bit. A lot of my books are $3.99 on Amazon, so there you go. It just auto-calculated a new royalty right here. But keep in mind that if I did want to do $1.99 right here, you'll see that it won't let me unless I change my royalty down to 35%. And now there's no delivery fee, but it is 35% instead, which means I'm only making 70 cents per book. So you can play with this. You can see what a 99-cent book would look like if you were to put it on sale, or you could price your ebook really high. I wouldn't recommend doing this. It's very uncommon unless you are in a really unique genre. Otherwise, you'll usually see ebooks under $9.99. But if you do change it back after you've been playing around, always remember to go back to the top and select your 70% royalty, because otherwise they won't automatically put it back to that for you and you'll be making less. Just something to keep in mind. But once you've set a price that you feel comfortable with, then you can scroll down and see that it automatically changed the price in its other markets. If you wanted to, you could go in and update them to make them 99 cents like this, but you don't have to. That's just something you could consider doing if you wanted to, or you could just leave everything else as is. And then here you'll notice the book lending section actually has nothing for us to do because it's locked. And the reason it's locked is that any title with a 70% royalty option is required to be enrolled. So if you really didn't want this, that could be another reason to check the 35% box. Last but not least, we have our pre-order terms. So if you want to, you can click this button and read up on it, but essentially you're confirming that you have the rights to the book, you have the rights to sell it. And once you feel good about everything you've set up in these three sections, that is when you would click submit for pre-order. Or if you're not doing a pre-order, you would click publish. I'm not quite ready to submit this yet, so I'm instead going to click save as draft. Now let's go back to our bookshelf, because I promised you I would show you how to also set up a print version and connect the two. So the really cool thing about KDP is that once you've set up one of the three types of books, you can actually just click to transfer almost all of that information over to another format of the book, and it will automatically link the books. But if you happen to create a second format using this button and you filled it all in manually, then you could also click link the existing paperback or link the existing hardcover, and that would also link the books for you as well. So let's go ahead and click create paperback. We have the same 3 sections on the top: details, content, and rights and pricing, but we're going to have a little bit more to fill out when we get to the content section. So you can see it already pulled in language, book titles, series, edition number, author, contributors, description, publishing rights, keywords, and categories all automatically. The only thing that's new is this section right here, which is adult content. And it just asks, does this book contain language, situations, or images inappropriate for children under 18? And I clicked no. All we had to do is click save and continue, and now we're on to the content page. And this is where things really start to look different. Remember how I talked about ISBNs back with the ebook and how they weren't required? Well, they are required for a print book. And so you can just choose to have KDP assign you a free ISBN, or if you happen to purchase them through a website called Bowker in the US or somewhere else if you're in a different country, then you could go ahead and enter the ISBN that you personally own here. Now, I did purchase ISBNs in the past, and I happen to have one left, so I'm going to go ahead and use my own ISBN for this book, but you could definitely click the free ISBN, and I've done this for many books of mine as well, and it of course allows me to include my own imprint, aka my own publishing company name here as well. This is a personal decision, so definitely think about it. That's for a different video, but let's move on to the publication date. And it says optional here, but actually you can't fill the section out. If I try to click on this, it's not going to let me, because it's actually going to fill this in for you when your book is officially published. Because again, KDP doesn't let you do a pre-order for a print copy at this time. So let's just scroll on to the next option, which is the print options. And this is where the biggest changes happen. You have a lot of choices to make here. There are 4 different types of paper. I noticed that in young adult, cream paper is typically preferred, and so for this series I think I might go ahead and switch, even though my personal preference is white paper. But we're going to go ahead and match genre expectations and switch to cream paper for this series. And it might not seem like a big deal, but what you choose can actually affect the size of the spine, because the different papers are actually different thicknesses. So just keep that in mind. You will want to tell your cover designer which one you selected, and then you want to stick with that. Don't change it after the fact. Next, you'll have your trim size. So this is the actual size of the book. Now 6x9 is the automatic choice, but for my genre, it's typically more like 5x8. So I'm going to switch to that. And if you need to, you can also scroll through these. Keep in mind that the size of your book will be locked in once you press publish. You won't be able to change it. So do a little bit of research if you need to, and make sure that you like the size you chose. And then let's move on to bleed settings, which there's a little explanation here. But for most books, you don't have to use this unless you have images that you want to stretch all the way to the edge of the pages and not have any white space showing. So for example, maybe you want to include a map and have that stretch all the way, which I have done and I'm considering doing for this book. So I'm going to click yes. I want to try bleed if I have a map. If I change my mind, as long as I change it before publishing, I can switch back to no bleed. But once you publish, this is also locked in. No bleed is definitely easier if you want to save yourself a headache, but if you are comfortable doing the work to figure out how to do bleed and research, again, you can click learn more and figure out how to do this. You definitely can. And then we have our cover finish. So KDP supports glossy as well as matte covers. You would typically want to choose what's most common in your genre. In my genre, I typically see matte covers, so I'm going to leave it clicked on matte. Once again, we are at the manuscript option, but here you'll notice that you do not have the option to skip it. You have to upload something before you're allowed to move on to the pricing step. I had to come back for this next section because I didn't have the book done at the time of recording, but now, as you can see, I have put in the final manuscript, a PDF file, because if you try to use a Word file, it will be extremely wonky and you will have a lot of issues. So always choose PDF if you can. And then as you can see, it says I use the cover creator, but actually my cover designer, Mandy, designed this entire cover, but she designed it for the Barnes & Noble specifications. So what I ended up doing is, instead of asking her to do the work of making a second version for KDP, I just popped this version to the cover creator and I ordered a proof copy, so we'll see if it works, but eventually I will be asking her and paying her for the full cover file. But now when I click launch preview, as you can see here, it's going to easily launch the book, and there's just one little issue which I'll show you in a second, but you can see everything is within the lines, which is very important. This white line represents where they're most likely going to cut, but you still want to have the image extend past that, and then this red line is what they want all text and graphics to be inside of that, just in case it also happened to be cut off. So everything looks great because, again, my cover designer made this. The last thing I need is she's going to give me the title PNG file to match the new cover font for both that page and this page, as well as for my name. But honestly, it still looks awesome. You just got a sneak peek at my dedication there, that I've never done a dedication before. I like to go through and check every single page. So that's something that I highly recommend that you do. And I also order a proof copy of the physical book, which I'll show you in a second. So as long as you feel it's good, click approve right here. And then the very last section is now the summary of everything that you've chosen. So you'll see it has my ink and paper type, my bleed settings. I picked no bleed. I picked the matte finish, 5x8, and there are 261 pages in this book. So that all pulled together allows them to give me the final printing cost right here. Okay, now let's go back to the original video and move on to the pricing page. You're going to recognize a lot of this from the ebook. We have the territories, marketplace that's primary for you, and your pricing, royalty, and distribution page all look pretty similar. The only difference here is your royalties on the side are going to be different for print copies. So for Amazon, your royalty is 60% for a paperback. And if you wanted to do expanded distribution, which you can read more about if you'd like, then it is going to be 40% royalty rate. And to find out what that actually looks like, let's type in an average number, like for example, $12.99. It's going to cost $3.09 to print this particular book. When I upload the final book, the file will probably be a little different, and this number will also be a little bit different. But it gives you a general idea, and then they're going to tell you what your royalty rate is here and what it would be if you did expanded distribution. So that's actually really awesome, and this is one of the reasons that I love when people order paperbacks, because typically the royalty is higher. And it depends on your genre, but maybe it's a newer book, so you get to price it a little bit higher. You could actually make a fairly good royalty. But keep in mind, whenever you raise the price, you do also make it a little bit less likely that some people will buy. And so you could potentially go quite a bit lower as well for a lower royalty, but maybe more people will be interested in buying. This is a strategy you can definitely do your research on and compare to other books in your genre. But I do want to point out that there's once again a minimum and a maximum here, and this is based on your book's printing costs. So it just makes sure that there is at least enough money coming in for it to cover the cost of printing the book. So let's go ahead and plug that in and show you what that looks like. If we did the minimum price, you would make $0 because Amazon still wants their cut as well. So typically I'm going to guesstimate this might be a $13.99 book. And then I just wanted to show you how it auto calculates that price down to all the other vendors, again, just like with the ebook. And once again, it has a terms and conditions section. But here's important to notice that it takes up to 72 hours for your book to be available for purchase on Amazon. And prior to that, it will be in review on your bookshelf. So two really important things to know. Number one, when you press this publish button, it becomes locked in. In review means it's locked. You will not be able to make any changes. So do not press this button until you're absolutely ready and you have the final product. It's really important to know, and it's not a pre-order like an ebook. Once you press publish, it will be published as is. So keep that in mind and make sure that you have everything finalized before you click this button, because once it's put into review, you can't change anything and it will be locked until it's published. The second thing I want to point out is it says it takes up to 72 hours, so do make sure that you give yourself that wiggle room. If you have a specific release day where you want this book to be out on, I would definitely publish 72 hours before, but it almost never actually takes that long. I've never experienced it taking 72 hours unless there was an error in the document that I uploaded. Otherwise, I've almost always seen it being approved within a few hours to a day. So keep in mind that the book will probably go live sooner than that, but typically people won't find it unless you tell them about it, so that's totally fine. Again, I do not want to publish this, so I'm going to click Save as Draft and then go back to the bookshelf where you'll be able to see that now we have two versions of the book in draft mode. We have the ebook and the paperback, and if we wanted to, we could also create a hardcover right here. Last but not least, I want to point out these three dots on the side because it allows you to go to each of those three sections that we went through in this walkthrough individually and go directly to those pages, as well as enroll in KDP Select, manage a series, unlink the books if you linked them by accident, or to delete a book if you feel like it was made in error. So there you have it. That is how you upload a book to KDP, both ebook and print copies. And if you are interested in checking out my book, I will definitely link it below for you so you can go check it out, because by the time this video goes live, it will be live on Amazon, and this is what it looks like, so you can actually see what your hard work looks like after you've officially clicked the pre-order button and it goes live on Amazon. I hope this video was helpful for you and that you appreciated getting to see a real life version of what it looks like to upload a book and all the changes that they've made since I last did my video right here. Again, if you have any questions, I really recommend checking out this help button right here at the top. There's so much helpful info on KDP. They walk you through literally everything and answer almost all questions that you can come up with. And if you ever couldn't find something here on the side after you look through, and they really do have literally almost everything, you can always click contact as well. I mention that because people like to ask me questions and I don't work for KDP, so typically I don't know the answer any more than you guys do. I use the help button as well all the time. So I hope this video is helpful for you and that you have an awesome day and enjoy uploading your book to be published. If you're watching this, chances are you're considering publishing your book through INGRAMSPARK. And this is one of the really big companies that a lot of self-published authors use. It's not actually a bookseller itself. It's something called an aggregator that will distribute your book to other book retailers who will then sell your book for you, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. There's actually a lot of places, and INGRAMSPARK does sell books to places around the world. So in this video, I thought I would share with you the pros and cons, because there are 4 really big pros, but also 4 really big cons to using this company. And then I also will share a tutorial because I realized it's been years since I've done a tutorial and it's completely out of date at this point. So I'll show you the new dashboard, give you a little tour, and tell you some of the things you need to know when you're uploading your book. And I will include some warnings at the end so that you don't go in blind and run into some problems that I discovered the hard way. So let's get into all of it. First, the pros and cons. So we'll start with the pros. Number 1, you can publish ebook, paperback, and most importantly, hardcover books with dust jackets. While ebooks and paperbacks are honestly pretty easy to publish on many different companies, hardcovers have in the past been really tricky to do, especially if they have a dust jacket. Although I will say there's more and more competition coming up, like Barnes & Noble Press, I believe Lulu maybe, and maybe Book Vault. I think, is Draft to Digital getting in that space? I'm not sure. KDP did add hardcovers, but they don't include dust jackets yet. So there's a lot more competition coming up, but I will say that a lot of authors still go to INGRAMSPARK for their hardcovers just because they've kind of been the long-term go-to company for this particular thing. Oh, 48 Hour Books, I just worked with them for like a special edition type of hardcover. They were twice as expensive for printing. The second pro is that both booksellers and librarians typically purchase through INGRAMSPARK. This does not mean that they will buy your book, it just means that they have the option to, versus I have been told by both booksellers like Barnes & Noble and librarians that they are not allowed to purchase through Amazon, or they don't want to if it's competition like Barnes & Noble. So if they're not purchasing through Amazon and your book is only there, that would kind of limit your options, versus if you're on INGRAMSPARK, your options are a lot more open. Again, not guaranteed to actually sell to these people, but at least it's an option. The third pro is their distribution, just meaning like how much access do they have to booksellers and readers alike. They have a really good foundation in the US, but they also have a lot of companies that they work with and can sell your books to, I guess, overseas as well. So it's a really good way to reach international readers. And then number 4, last but not least, the main reason that I personally use this company, despite a lot of reservations on my part, is because they allow print pre-orders. I'm trying to be really specific here. Print means like paperback and hardcover, because honestly, when it comes to ebook pre-orders, that's really easy to do. You can go to so many companies, KDP, Draft to Digital, Apple, Kobo, Barnes & Noble Press, Google Play. But when it comes to print pre-orders, it's always been a little bit more limited for us indie authors again. And I think that is also changing. But at this point in time, if you work with KDP, for example, that's a company owned by Amazon, they don't offer print pre-orders yet. So here's hoping that changes soon. But at this point, if you wanted to have a pre-order up on Amazon, you actually would have to go through a company like INGRAMSPARK, who would distribute that pre-order to Amazon, because Amazon themselves do not offer it, if that makes sense. So those are the 4 pros to working with INGRAMSPARK, but now let's talk about the 4 cons, because the first con is that their customer service is an absolute nightmare. If you search my name here on YouTube plus INGRAMSPARK, I have a lot of videos where I've discussed this, so I won't go super in depth today, but I have a lot of real life examples of just being really frustrated with the way that I've been treated, and I have a lot of proof to back that up. And so it can be small things like dealing with misprints. It could be them actually publishing the wrong files of the book. It can be shipping issues. Like, there's so many things that I have dealt with. And when it comes to their customer service, they don't even have a phone number anymore. They've removed it so that at this point you have to email and then just hope that there isn't a massive queue and you're getting lost in the shuffle. And if you have like an urgent problem going on, you're kind of out of luck, honestly. The second con is that they require authors to set a wholesale discount on our books, which massively affects how much we are actually getting paid versus how much they keep per book. And I will be showing you when we do the uploading process exactly what I'm talking about here. So we'll get into that later. Number 3, they do actually require some sort of dummy file or placeholder file, whatever you want to call it. When you start the upload process, it looks like they don't anymore. And I was like excited about that when I started the uploading tutorial section of this video. And then I realized, no, you actually cannot complete the uploading process unless you have some kind of files uploaded for both the cover and the interior. And you might be like, that's fine, what's the big deal? Well, if your book is not finished yet, which by the way is very common in traditional publishing and indie publishing, then you will have to upload something that's not finished, and there is a chance that they will publish that book. And you might be like, what are the chances of that happening? Like, that's not a big deal. Well, actually, I have experienced it myself, and I know at least 2 other author friends who have as well. So unfortunately, this is an issue. Number 4, while they did actually remove their initial uploading fee, which awesome, I appreciate that a lot, they actually still have a revision fee for everything after 60 days. So if you don't have your book finished, which again, we've talked about, maybe I wanted to have a 3-month pre-order or a 6-month pre-order, and my book is going to be finished 2 months before release. So I'm uploading it, and then about 4 months later is when I plan to upload the final files. Well, guess what? I'm going to have to pay a revision fee when I upload those final files. And it is $25 for the interior, $25 for the cover. And of course, if you change one, you're going to have to change the other. So it's pretty much $50 every time. So those are the pros and cons. I'll get into a little bit more at the end, just give you a couple more final warnings. But let's jump into the uploading process now and take a look at my screen. And of course, just like any of the other print-on-demand companies, you will have to set up an account really quick. I'm not going to show you mine because it's personal information, obviously, like tax and home address and all that good stuff. But it's fairly straightforward. Just follow the prompts, and then once you're finished, it'll bring you to this home page where you can then go to the left side drop down and click the title option to get started on uploading your book. This page is where you're going to see all the books that you've uploaded. So I actually had an incomplete version, and instead of having to pay for revisions, I just started a fresh version because I don't believe that authors should have to pay for their books. But anyway, I have a lot of my books uploaded on this platform, and I thought I'd show you how to upload really briefly. Typically, you would click on the upload a title and pick which option you want, and I personally do print book only, again, because I do ebooks on other platforms such as Draft to Digital, mainly because the royalties for ebooks on Ingram are not very good compared to other places. For print books, the reason I do use INGRAMSPARK is mainly, again, for those international sales and also for hardcovers. Like, this is a hardcover book right here. So that's all titles right here. You could also click add title on the left side to start this process. I would click print book only. So at this point I can actually say, no, I want to enter my title information right now, but submit my files later, and I can move on. After that, personally, you could just print a book, but I would say most people are here to actually distribute and sell their books. So you would click that option and click continue. This top bar is going to show you all the sections that you have to fill out. So what I'm going to do is have fun filling this out for a future book where I don't actually have a title yet. This is not the real title, it's just the work in progress, but we're going to call it the Butter Book. It is in English, but of course you could use the drop down to pick a different language if that's the case for you. Another change that I love is that INGRAMSPARK does provide free ISBNs now, and I absolutely take advantage of that. I have a whole other video about ISBNs. You can check it out. I will link it below. When it comes to the publishing rights, if you are an indie author, you will most likely be clicking this option, and they will double check and have you read through this and make sure, okay, no, you're not using someone else's information, you're not pirating a book, and I'll say, no, we are good to go. If you have any questions about whether your book was a public domain work, you could definitely do the click here and learn more option. And then I also have noticed that they recently added the AI question where they're like, hey, are you using AI? Just so you know, right now, they're not really doing anything with this that I have noticed, but I have seen a lot of the print-on-demand companies asking this question, and I think they just want to differentiate that as well. You could click to add a few more fun details about your book, like if you had a subtitle, if it's in a series, what's the name, what number book is this in the series? Now, I don't have a name, but let's pretend that the Butterbook series is the name and this is book 1. I would do something like that. These 2 questions at the bottom about editions mean, has this book been published before in the past? And so the Butterbook has never been published before, so I would leave this blank. But if you have published before and maybe it's a different name for the book, for example, you could put that here and then put that as a 2nd or 3rd edition or whatever it might be. Under the authors and contributors section, this is typically going to be you, and you would put in either your real name or your pen name, depending on what you choose to do. You can also kind of go into this if you like. I personally don't bother, but you could put in your biography if you'd like to do that. If you had a co-author, you would add them here by clicking this button. I'm going to get rid of that. And then imprint is actually basically the publisher. So this is what the retail sites are going to list as your publisher. I personally use my business, Grace House Press, for that section. Under subject, they say to choose 3 subjects. Now, this is, if you're clicking the button on the side, picture this like if you walked into a bookstore, what shelf would it be on? Because it's very important to not list your, YA fantasy over in cooking by accident. Readers aren't going to be looking there. So same thing with online. If they're not looking for your book, if they're not even in your section, they're not going to find you, and your target readers are going to miss out on your books. It's really important to kind of browse through these, try to get a feel for, okay, what would fit my book the best? I wonder if I searched Fae, if it might find something. Fairy tale, and folklore. Okay, I believe on INGRAMSPARK this actually refers to middle grade, so I need to uncheck that box, cancel that, and I need to go into young adult. That is actually the category that I personally write in. So let's try this again. I could do coming of age, for example, and sometimes when you click the drop down, there's nothing there, but other times when you click the drop down, there might be a bunch of different options. Let's go ahead and do fairy tales and folklore. I'm thinking also we could do some kind of fantasy. I might actually go online onto a vendor and see what types of books fall under this category. I might look for Fae books, because that's what mine is going to be, and be like, oh, okay, they fall under fantasy general, or they fall under fantasy romance. I think that would count. Maybe dark fantasy. So I will add those, and I have 3 categories here, which it said for best results, choose 3. The next category is your audience, and again, mine is young adult, and unfortunately, it looks like these are required now. In the past, I was always told not to fill these in if you could help it, but unfortunately, it kind of looks like it has to be. So I'm just going to choose the same age range as my audience. And that's because my books don't have spice, they don't have swearing, they don't go too intense, hopefully. That's just my preference. But if yours did, you could put a higher age range for sure, or you could say it's adult, etc. For the description, this is your book blurb. For the sake of this video, I'm going to use the Stolen Kingdom blurb, because I don't have a blurb for the Butterbook right now. So we're just going to go ahead and copy paste that in. And then you'll notice that it's a little bit weird on the spacing. So you can just go ahead and play with that, play with the bold and italic and underline. If you wanted to add bullet points, that's probably something you might do for a nonfiction book, etc. And you're going to see that it has a minimum and a maximum here. The next section is keywords. Definitely read up on what keywords are, but what I like to think of is these are what your readers are typing into, say, the Amazon search bar, for example. What would a reader be typing in if they're looking for a book like my Butterbook, as I'm calling it? Maybe Fae romance, maybe no spice Fae books, for example. I don't want to keep guessing in this category when I haven't actually done my research yet, but I think I'm supposed to separate with semicolons like this, but you would want to fill this out a lot. And what these are long tail keywords when they have more than one word. That's actually preferable. You don't want to go super long, but the more specific they are, as long as readers are actually searching them, the more likely you'll find your target readers that way. You could click the show more, and you could add a short description if you want to. This just means essentially a kind of a hook. Then we'll click continue. Most of my books have been 5 by 8 lately. That's just kind of what my genre has been. In some cases, I might add bleed, and so I might go to something a little more specific, like say this one, but you're going to want to do your research on what's common in your genre, what you personally want to do, and of course, you're going to need to communicate that with your cover designer and or your formatter to make sure that you're all on the same page, because this is the size of your book and how it will print. You have the option to add color if that happens to be, like if you're doing a children's book or something like that. Typically though, you're going to do black and white, and you'll find that there are 4 different types of paper. I have been doing cream lately because that's more genre standard in young adult, but honestly, I've done white in the past too. It's not a big deal, but the reason that you need to make this decision and stick to it is because it actually will change the spine slightly if you do cream versus white. And so you're going to want to communicate this to your cover designer and then stick to it. In this case, I think I'll probably be starting out with a paperback, but I love that I could do a hardback as well. And there's only one option for paperback. If you were to do a hardcover, you can see that there's case laminate, but there's also a few other options like a case laminate with a dust jacket right here. We're going to go ahead and stick with paperback though. The last part of this section is whether you want a gloss cover or a matte cover. And again, kind of focus on what your genre typically will have. Mine is typically going to have matte covers. It's going to list out all your decisions right here. So this is something you could send to your cover designer, and then you can decide, well, do I want to enable this duplex option? It means that you're able to print on the inside cover of your book. This is a cool new feature that I've actually never tried through INGRAMSPARK. However, I will say that there's obviously an upcharge in the printing. It's going to make it quite a bit more expensive. Just keep that in mind. I have never done this, so I'm going to click no, and let's just say that my page count was 300 pages. I don't actually have the final page count, so I have no idea, but that's kind of an average book right now. And then it will tell you, okay, here's going to be your print cost in the US. If you were somewhere else, you could also change this. Then you'll move on to print pricing. And so this is unfortunately where things get a little dicey. In the United States, a typical YA fantasy 300-page book right now might be $15. Let's say $14.99. Okay. And unfortunately, INGRAMSPARK is going to require that you have a discount, what's called a wholesale discount. So let me click on this so you could read it really quick. They also have a video. One thing that you should know that bothers me a lot is that this wholesale discount is really meant for booksellers. When booksellers like maybe Barnes & Noble, for example, want to come and buy your book, awesome. You want to give them a discount because you want them to be excited about buying your book. And so say for Barnes & Noble, you give them 55%. Awesome. But you'll notice that my compensation went from $9 to $1.12. And on top of that, typically when you work with booksellers, you have to allow them to have a return option, whether deliver or destroy. So I typically will do this, but that is a really miserable compensation for authors. That's terrible. So instead, I'll click the other option and do the lowest that they'll let me do, which is 40%. You'll notice that my compensation is now $3.36, which is better than $1, but not nearly as great as it could have been. This is where I want to pause really quick and point something out that I think many authors don't even realize. This wholesale discount is for booksellers and maybe librarians, people who have access to it, right? However, does your average reader who's purchasing the book on Amazon get this wholesale discount? No. Or if they purchase it on Target or Barnes & Noble? No. If a single individual reader is buying your book, they are not receiving this wholesale discount, but you are still providing it because you are forced to provide it as an author. So this is something I think there needs to be a lot more discussion on. I think INGRAMSPARK needs to start getting much more open about this because they are pocketing that wholesale discount. And on top of that, there have been articles out that say that when they're on the bookseller side, for example, someone who actually did work with Barnes & Noble and wanted to purchase the book through Barnes & Noble, that they actually were not getting a 40% discount in the store themselves. They were getting a 10% or a 15% or whatever it might be. And that INGRAMSPARK was actually still pocketing a very large chunk of this wholesale discount. And that was when it was a 55% discount. So if you imagine me putting it at 40%, they might only be getting a 5% discount for all that we know as authors. This is really frustrating as an author, and I just think that you need to be aware of this before you go into working with a company like this. And unfortunately, when you're outside the US, you still have to have a minimum of a 35% discount for all of these other places as well. I think the last one right here is 30%. So you can see your compensation drop quite a bit. You also have to click some of these options, which reminds me that I need to go up to the top, and I do not actually have a return option for these other countries because the return costs are astronomical. Right here, publishers are charged the current wholesale cost of the title plus shipping and handling, $2 per book for the US and $20 per book for US returns to an international address. So you can imagine how incredibly expensive it would be to have the return option on the overseas over here. And there's another box for me to click now. But that is something you can pause to read these if you're interested. Unfortunately, I don't have the option to skip the wholesale discount anymore, and so that really affects my compensation as an author. These last options right here, enabling the look inside the book feature, is really fun, but don't do this unless you've uploaded your final file. You can come back to this, I believe, but I'm not going to click yes now because then people could read, you know, a dummy file if I had one. The large text edition, you can read up on that if you want to click and know more, but that's if you actually had large text for people who wanted that. And then right to left content is pretty rare in the US, but you might have that, for example, and so you could definitely click that option as well. And then you get to choose your release date. I have no idea when the Butter book is going to come out. Let's just say, how cool would it be if it came out sometime in November? Who knows? And then I'm just going to mention that I would leave this on sale date empty because that's typically, I believe, when booksellers and readers can actually start buying it. So you do not want them to start buying it early. So I would leave that box alone. Let's move on to the next page, which is the uploading section. This is where you would upload your files. Now, I don't have any files. Even though in the beginning I said that I did not have my files ready yet, you can see that they're not actually going to let me move on until I do have files. So really, they don't let authors upload a book and set up the publication unless you have some sort of dummy file set up. If you feel comfortable doing that, you could upload something. I would encourage you, if you're uploading interior pages, to have something in the beginning, just in case they actually did start printing, that lets your reader know, hey, this is not the final copy. This is just a placeholder book. And then hopefully for the print cover, maybe you're able to work with a cover designer who gives you something temporary that you could use early on, and they're willing to do that. And then you can change that down the road. But this right here is one reason that it's very frustrating that you have to pay revision fees later on down the road with INGRAMSPARK, because after 60 days, say I set up a pre-order with some dummy files and my pre-order window is 3 months long or 4 months long or even 5 or 6 months long, that's not very long in the grand scheme of things. However, I would still have to pay a revision fee for both of these, and I believe it's $25 each. So that would be very expensive. Just keep that in mind. And since I can't press continue, I'm just going to point out that the validation, confirmation, and complete sections are very straightforward. Validation is where they're just going to let you know if there are any errors in your uploads. In the confirmation, you're going to say, yes, I'm good to go, and you're going to pay, and then you're going to complete the entire process, and your book will be uploaded. I'm not going to move forward with that because I don't actually want to publish some sort of dummy file for the sake of this video, but this will hopefully give you a feel for how INGRAMSPARK has updated since the last time that I published a book through them and shared that with you guys. Okay, what I should have said during the end of that screen recording was that when you finish this uploading process, you're actually submitting your book to INGRAMSPARK for review, not submitting it to retailers to go on sale, because there's actually still a few steps you have to go through before that will happen. Big picture, INGRAMSPARK has to review your files first, then they're going to bounce them back to you for you to review again, possibly if there are errors, or just to approve and say, yes, you're good to go, and then potentially order a proof copy. Finally, when you approve it, it'll bounce back to INGRAMSPARK the second time, and that's when they'll start sending out your information to retailers, and it'll take a while, but it'll eventually get uploaded to all of the different retail sites for pre-order or for release. Oh, okay. I'm just Googling it now, but I thought it was 3 business days that INGRAMSPARK needed to review, but now I'm reading that it says 5 to 7 business days for them to review your book after you uploaded it and you finished that process that we just went through. I mean, that does make sense though. That sounds right to me. Anyway, coming back to the point, they say business days. I know that for a fact. And so that means do not count the weekends when you're like looking at a calendar trying to figure out when they might be done. Do not count holidays, and do not count the day that you submit it, because most likely they won't count that day either. I believe it's like after, I don't know, I can't remember if it's 2 p.m. or what it was. Don't quote me on that. But after a certain point in the day, they don't count that as one of the business days either. Okay, so let's say it took them roughly a week, maybe a little bit more, and they finished their review process, and now they're gonna bounce the book back to you. Either they're gonna say, they found an error, you have to address it, kind of start the whole process over again. Or they might say, okay, you're good to go. Here is an e-proof copy for you to approve. So that's going to look like something you can either click on it in your email, or you can go to your account and find it that way, and you're going to review this e-proof copy. And I really, really, really recommend you take a very close look at it, scroll through every page, make sure there's nothing weird going on. And then you have two options. You could either click approve, it looks good, I'm ready to get this book out there to retailers, or you could order a physical proof copy first. Kind of depends on where you're at in the publishing process. For me, I personally think it's really, really, really important to see a physical proof of your book before it's published, but not necessarily before you set up a pre-order. It really depends on the timeline. So let me just back up and kind of explain. The physical proof, and INGRAMSPARK will say this as well, is really important for you to review because you never know if there's something you just can't see on the digital side of things, like maybe the spine is a little bit crooked, or the color is actually printing really weird, or I don't know, the back cover's crooked. Like, you never know until you actually see a physical book in your hands. However, just a quick side tangent, when you order a print proof copy, it can get a little bit dicey because it takes a really, really long time. So first of all, when you order it, they're going to tell you that there's a print time and a shipping time. Typically, I have found that for paperbacks, it's somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks, and hardcovers take even longer. And here's my first warning. Even though they do offer faster shipping and printing time, I think as well, I have actually tried it twice. And one time I even ordered a regular copy like the next day, and I got them on the same day. So I have found in my experience that it's not actually any faster at all. So that's a complete waste of money. I would not recommend it personally. Once your proof copy arrives, you're gonna probably wanna actually take time to review it. It could just take you a day if you're just flipping through, looking for anything like minimal. But for me, typically, I actually do my proofread. And so I'm gonna take a full week typically to review that book. And of course, if you find any issues, which is very common actually to find, even if it's just really small and you have something you want to tweak, you actually have to start the whole process over again, upload those new files, go through the submission, have them review it, and then approve the e-proof copy all over again. So this whole process could take anywhere from, say, 2 or 3 weeks to 2 months, honestly, in some cases. So just be aware that towards the end of release, when you're getting ready to actually publish your book, you might need a really good solid 2-month buffer window to complete this process and make sure your book looks good before you press publish. If you're interested in also proofreading when you get your proof copy like I do, I actually do have a video coming up in this compilation video all about how I proofread. So I'll put the timestamp right here for that. So that's what I would do if I were getting ready to publish. But let's say you're back in the pre-order stage, so all you really need to do at this point is approve that e-proof copy, because it's not actually probably the final files yet anyway, and you just need to make sure the cover looks good and all the information you put in is correct to go ahead and submit your book to retailers to have them start putting it out for pre-order. At this point, when you press approve, you might think, okay, the book's gonna be live on retailers like tomorrow, right? But unfortunately, no. They have said to me in the past, I don't know if this is still the case, but it's typically about 10 business days roughly for your information to get out to all these other retailers like Amazon, Barnes & Noble. So it can still be between when you first submit your book and when you finally see it show up on retailers for pre-order, at least 2 weeks typically. And that's a long time. This means that if you count those, let's see, I thought it was 3 business days. Now apparently it's 5 to 7 business days for INGRAMSPARK to approve. And then you approve the e-proof the next day. And then it takes roughly 10 or more business days to get to the retailers. It's over 2 weeks, probably closer to 3 at least, before you're actually going to see your book on a retailer for pre-order. So just keep that in mind. The reason I bring this up is because a lot of us authors really like to do a fun reveal. Maybe it's a cover reveal along with a pre-order link. And so you're gonna wanna plan really, really far ahead because it's probably gonna take longer than you expect. Once I actually had to reach out to Ingram because I had made some changes and Barnes & Noble hadn't changed for an entire month. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes it can take a really long time. In my experience, this does mean that I tend to give myself a bigger buffer range, and then the book might show up sooner, hopefully, before I'm actually ready to reveal it. And you might be like, oh no, then readers are gonna find it. But in my opinion, that's not as big a deal as if you do your big reveal, but you don't have a pre-order link to share with your readers because it's not done yet. Better to have the book out for a while and you know it's there. Most of your readers probably have no idea because typically they're not gonna go and stumble across your book unless you go and tell them about it. Whew, that was a lot of information to cover, so you can see why I've avoided doing an update on this topic for so long. Whew, that was a lot of information, but I hope it was super helpful for you. And now let's move on to how to upload to Draft to Digital. Super excited to talk about Draft to Digital today because this is one of the places where I upload my book to sell ebook copies online. And this is used to go wide. It just basically means you're publishing your book outside of Amazon. And that includes vendors like Apple and Nook and Kobo and libraries and you name it. So we're finally going to dig into how to upload your book to Draft to Digital, as well as point out 2 amazing bonus features on Draft to Digital, which is their formatting options and their universal book link. Really quick, I have done a video on how to make ARCs of your book, advanced reader copies, and how to send them. And a big part of that is using Draft to Digital. So if you have missed that, I'm going to link it below that you can go watch it after this. But for right now, I'm going to pull up my computer screen and we're going to dig into how to actually upload your book to Draft to Digital. Spoiler, it's super easy. To upload a book, you go to the My Books page and you just simply click Add New Book. Now, you might have noticed on that screen that the Enchanted Crown is already uploaded and it's available for pre-order in case you're curious. All the links are below, but we're gonna pretend that it's not. And so what I'm going to do is use my uploading dock right here, where I have gathered all of the information that belongs to this specific book and put it into this Google Doc. And I did talk about that in the video on where I publish my books, why, and how I juggle them. So go watch that video. I will link it below if you wanna know more. But what I'm gonna do is simply copy paste. And this is the amazing thing about having an uploading dock, is you just literally go back and forth. Fill in the publisher, which is yourself, and fill in the series name if you have one. Fill in the author name, obviously. The Enchanted Crown is the 4th book in the series and the last book. And search terms is actually keywords. So for keywords, let's go over to our keywords right here. For example, Sleeping Beauty. I'm just clicking Command Control. There you go. Click Enter and put in a keyword. Now, be careful not to put them all in as one big keyword. You're going to want to enter them one at a time like this. Some of these keywords are just off the top of my head. I'm not sure if they're that great. So I need to go in and do some keyword research. But for right now, I'm going to keep it pretty basic. But for example, this is a category, so I could also make it a keyword. The nice thing about keywords is on here, you can grab them and move them around. And you can also delete them if you need to, and you can add more whenever you need to. Where it says BISAC, or however you want to pronounce that, think of this as your online bookshelf. So these categories need to describe your book as best as possible, because this is going to tell Draft to Digital and then essentially tell all the other vendors where to put your book on the online shelf. So if, for example, you write a fantasy but you put your book in dystopian, it's on the wrong shelf, and the readers who are going to browse that shelf are going to browse right past it because it's not the genre that they read. That's not why they came here. So it's very important that you get your categories right. The nice thing is that if you don't know what to write in this box, and most people don't, you can go ahead and browse down here. So for example, let's go ahead and find young adult fiction, and then you're going to see tons more categories. So what you're going to want to do is you have big umbrella categories, but you're going to want to narrow it down to what you call subcategories or subgenres as much as possible. The more specific you can get, the better. For example, I see fairy tales and folklore adaptations. That's for sure going to be the Enchanted Crown. If you click one and you're like, no, that's not really it, you can just delete it like that. If this was the Ginny Key, this would be the perfect category. I think there's also a dragon category. So there's also royalty, which is so cool. Technically, yes. So I might try out this category and then go browse it later. So keep in mind that these are not set in stone. Even if your book is already published, you can go back in and change this. You can essentially move it to a different shelf. But for right now, I'm just gonna go ahead and pick a few of them. And then my goal as I do this, if I was actually publishing this book right now, would be to write down these categories that I'm picking and go ahead and browse them on the Amazon store and see if my book actually fits into those categories or in other stores, and take a look at the books around them, maybe get ideas for other categories that I didn't think of to try and put my book in those. So just keep in mind that a lot of this is research, but you can initially put some things in just as placeholders. So that's what we're gonna do. Since I can't remember what I actually picked, it lets you pick up to 5 on draft to digital, and then it stops you. So if I was to say, okay, royalty, actually that's very accurate for this book, but legends and myths, maybe not so much. I'm gonna delete that and I'm gonna put in anthologies, but I don't really know. I'm just making stuff up right now. Not all of these are perfect for the Stolen Kingdom. The first 2 definitely are. And just keep in mind, for draft to digital, I think it's Apple Books only goes by the very first one. So for example, if I thought royalty was the best one, I would want to drag that into the first place spot so that it goes into the correct category. I think it's Apple. But for me, fairy tales and folklore is for sure the #1 category that I put this whole series into, so I make sure that that's the top #1 spot. If you didn't have cover art yet and you still wanted to go through this process and start setting up your book, you could. Since I do have a temporary cover that I made, it's not the actual cover, it's just a temporary cover that I made to make it so I could do pre-orders, I'm gonna click that and then it's gonna ask me to upload it. You'll notice that it says don't upload a full, like a wraparound cover. They only want the front cover, which I'm pretty sure most of you already figured that out. There's my temporary cover, and if you guys have been watching some of my videos, you know that I have talked about how I could do a video on how I make temporary covers. This one's super basic, it's not even artwork, it's just something as a placeholder so I can put up pre-orders. But if you want that video, comment below. If I get enough votes, I'll push it up the list. But for right now, we've got our cover set up, and if you didn't, you could click the option that you're not ready and you just don't have a cover yet. We've got our title, series, publisher, author, categories, and keywords, so we're gonna click Start ebook. The next step is to put the file online. This is only the 4th draft, which means it's still absolutely terrible and not something I'm ever gonna show you guys. And you're gonna wanna click the release date that you know for sure you can make. So don't put it on tomorrow and then be like, oh shoot, I don't think I can make it. Most of these companies, from what I understand, will be okay with you changing your date, but your readers will be frustrated, and it's not a reputation you want to have. So it's better to set a date that's further out than you think you can do than a date that's closer than you think you can do. Let me rephrase that. That came out kind of weird. It's better to give yourself extra time than not enough time. That's what I'm trying to say. This says right now, the book will go live in 21 hours. It's letting me know at the top there. So I'm gonna say, heck no, let's go ahead and put my actual release date, which is March 23rd, 2021. Now we're gonna go back to that uploading doc and I'm gonna scroll down to the blurb section. I had fun including a bunch of praise for book 1 that I had some author friends do. And I also included what you'll see here at the bottom, which is the Stolen Kingdom reading order for the series. You don't have to do these things, but I find that it's helpful, and I've seen other author pages have that. And then this is kind of fun. You can format it. So say I want this first line to be big and bold. I didn't mean to italicize it, but it looked kind of cool, so why not? Let's say that I also want to make it clear that there are 2 other main characters. So there's Rena and then there's Nezrin. And I want to make it clear that this book brings all 3 of my main characters together in book 4. So kind of a fun little surprise. That's what's gonna happen if you didn't know. This little tagline thingy is always bold, so I'm gonna make that bold. I'm also gonna bold all the headers, so that one, and then right here, the Stolen Kingdom reading order. And then if you wanted to do other fancy stuff, you could. I like to keep it pretty simple, but you can play around with this because I love that you can format it to whatever you need it to be. Down at the bottom, you'll see it says 2 options for the ISBN. Now, if you missed the last video where I talked about ISBNs, it stands for International Standard Book Number. So it's your book's identifying number. It is sort of like your book's fingerprint or DNA. It is specific to your book. But the nice thing about draft to digital is that you do not have to pay for an ISBN. I think I said this slightly different in my last video where I said you don't even need an ISBN, but in this case, it looks like they do want you to pick. You'll notice that ebook and print ISBNs must not match because every version of the book is its own version and gets its own identifying number. So we're gonna go ahead and get the free draft to digital ISBN. So that was the details page. Now we're on the layout, and this is where I really love this. This is where we get into formatting. If you didn't have a title page, copyright page, a dedication, also by teasers, email signups, about the author, about the publisher. If you didn't have some of these pages, draft to digital helps you put them in after the fact. So Oh my gosh, they're amazing. I love this company, but as you can see, it will actually lay out the pages that I currently have. So right now I have 39 chapters and I have a title page and a copyright page. I could add in a teaser about another book. Like for example, normally you want to make a teaser for a book coming next, not a previous book, but if I wanted to, if this was leading into, say, Evelyn's number, I could put in a little teaser for that. And it's showing me all my other books that I have on Draft to Digital, which is awesome. I've never actually used this one before. Let's do that for kicks, because I've never done this. And also would be really fun to put, I'm gonna put it at both the beginning and the end of the book. I'm gonna have them include all my other books. I have no idea what this is gonna look like because normally I do all this formatting on my own before uploading the book to Draft to Digital, but just for fun, let's also add a dedication to my most amazingest YouTube viewers. That's all of you. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm gonna save and continue. Okay, we're gonna go into the layout for the Cursed Hunter here because I did not want to show you the first page of the Enchanted Crown. It's definitely not ready yet. So we're gonna click save and continue after you make sure that those are your chapters. And this is my absolute favorite part. And this you can do without ever publishing your book. If you didn't want to publish on Draft to Digital, you could still get to this stage and format your beautiful ebooks. I love the formatting on Draft to Digital, and I use this to send out ARC copies, advanced review copies, or advanced reader copies, whatever you want to call them. But for today's purpose, I just want to show you some of the cool options. So this is my also by page that I made myself, but you can also, if you saw it, make an also by page in there. Let's go to chapter 1, and I love this header. It's perfect for a dragon book, but fantasy also has a lot of other cool options like a crown, whatever that is. This one feels very sci-fi to me. This fantasy one is what I use for, I think, books 1 and 2 in the series for ebooks. This is also very classy and has a little bit more of a sci-fi vibe, but it could go either way. And I love that they also have romance designs here. I like that coffee cup. The mystery and thriller is actually really cute. I think this looks a little bit fantasy to me. And so does this one. This is very classy. A fingerprint. The all-purpose, there's like super basic, there's a watercolor or one in the corner. Whatever that is, kind of looks like an award to me. This is super classy. I love that. I could definitely change my books to that as well. Or a very minimal looking one that's just kind of a line. And then, now notice how the formatting is here and it's all smushed together like a typical fantasy read, but if you switch to the nonfiction options, it's actually formatting more than just that header. Actually, all of it is. It's formatting the whole book, but here you can really see how it does, where it has spaces between every paragraph. And the textbook one is the same way, but it has the drop caps on that H there, and it has just some really cool design elements to it. So let's go back to the one that I like, which is the dragon. I'm going to show you how it actually formats within the document as well. When you have those little star, you know, like a breaking up of scenes within a chapter, it will turn them into cool things like this. What is another example? Let me show you. There it is. Okay, where the heck did it go? Ooh, look at that. So anyway, you can play around with this. You can make your formatting really beautiful, and then once you have it formatted to your liking, you could publish it, which is this option at the bottom where it says I have reviewed this manuscript and I approve it for release. But you don't have to publish. You can also go to this right side section right here where it says download a Mobi file, download an EPUB file, or download a PDF. If you wanted to, for example, do an audiobook or a print project, you can make PDFs here of your novel with the beautiful formatting, and it's all stylized and perfect. Or if you are uploading, say you don't want to use Draft to Digital, but you do know that you need a certain type of file to upload to Nook or Kobo, or to send an ARC copy to those types of devices, you can download an EPUB. For me, I download a Mobi file, which is how you send books to a Kindle. So whenever I am sending out ARC copies or early reader copies to my patrons, I send out Mobi files. This is so helpful. Again, I have a video all about that. Go watch that if you want to know more. So that was the details. Then the layout is right here. I have it back on Dragon. And if you were to review it, you would want to go through from front to start. If you're actually publishing, you would want to go through page by page and make sure, okay, looks good, looks good, looks good. Okay, awesome. And then you're going to click I have reviewed it. Make sure you actually review it though. and then you're going to go ahead and have a published book. That brings us to step 4, which is publishing. This is where you can see all the stores where you can place your book. And I have currently Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Apple, Tolino, but then also you'll notice that Amazon has its own separate category here because this is KDP and it strictly monitors how you submit it. So it says don't select your Amazon distribution if your book is already on Amazon, like you've done the KDP setup, which I have, so I don't select Amazon. I also include my book in Scribd and something called 24 symbols. I don't know what those are, but I figure I'd rather have my book out wide and have people able to get it if they want to, and there's royalties, so why not? I do have it set up for Kobo Plus so that it also distributes to Belgium, the Netherlands, and Canada. And then there are library services at the bottom, so you can see that Draft to Digital does a lot for you, and instead of you having to go specifically to each one of these websites individually, you can do all in one, and Draft to Digital pushes it out to all of those websites for you. The library services that I currently have is Overdrive, Biblioteca, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and Baker and Taylor. And I don't know what Hoopla is. Again, I need to do some research because some of these places I am just fully unaware of. I pretty much buy books on Amazon, let's be real here, but not everybody does, so it's helpful to do your research and figure out where you want your book online. When I put in my price at the top here, I do believe it calculated the library price for me, but you can also read here that it says to approximately do 2 or 3 times higher than your digital book. So that's what it is, it's 2 times higher. And then you'll also notice that the royalties change if you change this. So for example, you can see the projected royalties change right there. Or if maybe someday I'll make my books $4.99 instead, it's like the tiniest little change. Look at that. So $3.99 you make $2.37, or $4.99 you make $2.97. So yeah, I'm gonna keep it at $3.99. And then here is where you actually publish the book. So I have published this before, so right now the button says apply changes, but then it brings up this little thing that says publish my book. So you're gonna wanna select that you are the original creator, right? You should be. And then you also want to select I confirm that I have all the rights necessary to make this content, the cover image, and all the other data provided by me available for marketing, distribution, and sale. And so you do have to make sure that your cover is something that is allowed to be sold, and also the interior stuff in your book. Hopefully you are not copywriting anybody. I think you know better than that. And so once you are sure that those 2 things are correct, you're going to click publish my book. Yay! That's how quick it was, like 2 seconds later. So it says ebook success. You've currently submitted The Cursed Hunter, successfully submitted it to all the retailers. It's currently being published, which means they're sending out that info to all of those publishers that you clicked that you wanted it to be available on. You can go to the book's detail page or click this little button here on the right to see what its status is and when it actually is fully uploaded to those platforms and it's available for pre-order. So let's go to that page. This is the book's page. If I scroll down, it's going to show me the details for the book. My current projected royalty is $2.37. My current price. You can do changing prices. You can see where it's published online. This is really handy. You could definitely screenshot this and, you know, put it somewhere to show people, like on your website or something. This is where my book is. This is where it's available. You can also go to download a specific type of file of the book right here, which is so cool. So you don't have to go all the way back to that other page that I showed you. You can just come right here and download the Mobi file if that's what you want, or download a sample of it if that's what you want. And then you can go ahead and scroll up here to see what they call the UBL, which stands for Universal Book Link. And this is the second bonus feature that I absolutely love about Draft to Digital. I'm going to click on it and show you what it looks like. This is the Universal Book Link for The Cursed Hunter. So what it does is it takes all of the stores where The Cursed Hunter is available. Technically they are ebook stores, but once you click on one, like say Kindle, you'll see that right next to the ebook is the paperback and the hardcover. So really it's showing you your book everywhere. It's one link, one universal book link to send to your readers, to put on YouTube videos, to put on social media, to send out for interviews, to send to people who, like a media package or whatever you want to call it. It's one link that you can give people where they can find your book on all vendors in all formats. So that's the generic universal book link, but that's sort of a random compilation of numbers and letters. So you can actually, I have to find it, hold on. I think it's under my account. Yep, there it is, Universal Book Links. You can scroll down here and you have a Universal Book Link dashboard. This is my dashboard for the Universal Book Links. It's just loading. And so right there, you can see the actual books. These are all coming from Draft to Digital, including some guides. But over here is the actual Universal Book Link. But then right below it, I have made a custom link. So instead of having to remember this gobbledygook, I just have books2read.com/The Cursed Hunter. And if your book title is unique, of course, if there's another book that happens to have taken it, then that could be a tricky thing. You might have to add some special details or, you know, call it Cursed Hunter or something like that. But you can get a book link that's specific to you, that's customizable. You can add store links to that book, and then you can see how many people click on it. So this is really, really helpful and cool. I really love this feature. The Stolen Kingdom has been out the longest, and you can see that over the time that I've started using this Universal Book Link, it has been used 554 times. So that's awesome. And if you want to edit your link, I believe you just click this right here. So say, for example, if I get my books onto Google Play, which I hope to do eventually, then you're going to click here. You're going to copy the link from the website that you want and paste it in here, and that will be added to your Universal Book Link. This is where you can add that custom name if you wanted to name it. So I added mine as The Stolen Kingdom. And there you have it. You can click copy link and you have a fantastic link. It even tells you, check this out, 554 readers found your book via this link specifically, 441 went to Amazon, 45 went to Apple, and 18 went to Indigo. And those are just the top 3 stores. So there you go. That's how I upload to Draft to Digital. It is also how I format my ebooks, and I love it. And it's also how I get a Universal Book Links. I've avoided doing a video about ISBN numbers for a long time because they're complicated, they're confusing, and honestly just a little bit boring. But this is a topic that gives so many new authors a lot of anxiety, and I've gotten so many comments over the years asking me about them. So I decided, okay, let's finally address it. I'm going to share what they are, if you need them, how to get them, and the differences between paid and free ISBN numbers. The good news is, once you have a quick breakdown of what ISBNs are, how they work, I think you'll find that they're really not that complicated, and you'll feel much more comfortable moving forward. An ISBN stands for your International Standard Book Number. So it's an identification number, and I like to think of it as your book's very unique fingerprint. If you were to flip over a book in any bookstore, you're going to see the ISBN number right next to the barcode right here. Whether it's a paperback or a hardcover, you're going to see that ISBN number right there. And just so you know, the barcode and the ISBN are two very separate things. We'll touch on the barcode a little bit more at the end, but just know that you do not have to worry about that as the author. The ISBN, on the other hand, you do have to make some decisions on. I'd say the first question that I get a lot is, do all books need to have an ISBN number? And technically, some of you are going to argue with me in the comments with this, but technically no. If you were, say, selling at a conference or selling direct from your website only, those are two instances where technically you don't have to have one. They're mainly used for online sales, or more specifically, technically online searches, like say by booksellers or librarians to find your book. And so since most of us as self-published authors are online, selling our books through typically online retailers, 99.9% of the time you will need an ISBN number. The second thing you need to know is that you'll likely need more than one ISBN for a book. This is a good example right here. This is the same book. There's a paperback edition and there's a hardcover edition. These will have different ISBN numbers on the back. I like to think of it as like your hand, like this is all your hand, this is all your book, but each individual finger is going to have a different fingerprint. I know this is kind of cheesy, but that's what helps me remember that even though technically ebook, paperback, and hardcover are all the same book, they all need a different ISBN number. And just to complicate things further, there are exceptions to this rule. For example, if you publish your ebook through KDP, which is a company owned by Amazon, you actually don't need an ISBN number at all because Amazon uses their own identification number called an ASIN. Again, this is specifically for ebooks. You will still need an ISBN for paperbacks and hardcovers. But when it comes to ebooks through KDP, you don't. And I believe this is also true of Google Play, which also has their own identification number. Our third or maybe fourth complication at this point, I've kind of lost track, is that every country is probably a little bit different when it comes to ISBN numbers. So my experience is from the US since I live in the United States, but I have heard that Canada actually provides free ISBNs to all authors, which is really cool. So while I will share with you as much as I possibly can, I think you probably still want to do some research if you live outside the US to make sure that this is all actually the same where you live. The good news is though that things have been changing a lot over the last few years. So while in the past you kind of had to buy an ISBN number sometimes in certain cases, now on almost every single print-on-demand company that I can think of, you can get a free ISBN number. So that leads authors to question, like, what do I do then? Do I still need to purchase ISBN numbers or can I use the free ones? And honestly, some authors have very strong opinions on this. I'm going to try to give you a balanced picture and let you decide. I tried to write this down so that I wouldn't miss anything because I think there are 4 things that you need to know when deciding if you're going to do a free ISBN number or a paid ISBN number. The first and most important thing you should know is that a free ISBN only works on the company that provides it. So you cannot take a free ISBN from, say, Kindle Direct Publishing and use it over on INGRAMSPARK. That is unacceptable. That's a big no-no. And vice versa. But this really isn't an issue because, like we talked about, every single company these days seems to offer their own free ISBN. So if I couldn't use the one from Kindle Direct Publishing, I would just get the free ISBN offered by INGRAMSPARK and solve that problem. Of course, that leads to the concern that there might be a duplicate of your book. And that's a valid concern because in some cases, yes. So let's kind of paint a picture. Let's say for your ebook, you upload to KDP, Draft to Digital, and Google Play. The good news there is that there's no duplicate because KDP has an ASIN number. Google Play has their own, I think it's like a GG key or something like that. And then that leaves Draft to Digital, who provides a free ISBN number, and you just have the one for ebook, just like you would if you had purchased paid ISBNs anyway. Then let's say for your paperback, you decided to publish through KDP and INGRAMSPARK. So if you get a free ISBN number from these companies, technically, yes, you would have 2 different ISBN numbers for the same book. You would have one free ISBN number from KDP and one free ISBN number from INGRAMSPARK. However, once again, this really doesn't bother me for a couple reasons. The first one being that readers don't even use ISBN numbers, so they're not even going to realize that this is happening. 99% of the time, the only person who's going to know is you. And then secondly, when an ISBN number is needed to look up your book, typically this is going to be like a librarian or more likely a bookseller, and they're going to ask you to provide that number, right? Because they're not going to just know it out of thin air. So then you as the author can choose which one of those ISBN numbers you want to provide to them and just give them the one. And that leads nicely to our next concern. Some authors are worried that maybe librarians and booksellers can't use these free ISBNs. They can if it's the INGRAMSPARK ISBN. My books are in multiple libraries, and I've also worked with multiple booksellers like Barnes & Noble to sell my books and given them the INGRAMSPARK ISBN number to look it up, and they've always been able to do so. Over the last, I want to say 2-ish years now, I have been using the free ISBNs without any issue. My books are in libraries. I've had booksellers buy them for book signings, like at Barnes & Noble, and not had any issue with that. On the flip side, if your books were using a paid ISBN number, but they were only on Amazon's KDP, a bookseller or librarian would not be buying them there anyway, because I've been told by both librarians and booksellers that they do not purchase books from Amazon. The last reason some authors might avoid using the free ISBN and still purchase ISBNs would be a very legitimate reason, which is that sometimes when you use a free ISBN, it will list that company, typically with Amazon, as your publisher instead of you and the imprint or company that you wanted to list as the publisher. Let me give you a real life example. If you go on Amazon and you look up some of my books, a lot of them, most of them will say Grace House Press, which is my imprint, aka my company that I set up to be my publisher. And there are just a few cases where I noticed that it will say say published by Amazon or independently published or something like that instead. Early on in my career, this kind of bothered me, and so that was one of the reasons that I did decide to go purchase ISBN numbers. But over time, I've really found that readers don't care about that. In fact, they usually don't even look at that. They typically will look at reviews. That's what matters, is what other readers are saying. And on top of that, I have found that it's really more dependent on the company that you're publishing with. For example, I believe I used a paid ISBN on KDP to upload to Amazon, and they still listed it as published by Amazon, versus I recently published this beautiful hardcover right here using a free ISBN through INGRAMSPARK, and yet when you go on Amazon, it still says that Gray's House Press is the publisher. So I think it's because it was coming through INGRAMSPARK, they are listing the imprint that you asked them to, versus when you upload through KDP, they like to claim that it was their book if they give you a free ISBN. I don't know, but it does seem like it's more dependent on who you're publishing with versus if the ISBN is free or paid. Hopefully that helps you make a more informed decision. So when you get to that point in your uploading process, you'll see a spot to upload an ISBN number. And if you haven't purchased any, you could just click the button that says, I would like a free ISBN number, and you can move on from there. However, if you want to purchase, in the US at least, you would go to a website called Bowker, and that is where you would both purchase your ISBNs. Typically, you're going to need more than one, so you'd probably get at least 10. And then you would also use this website to register a book. Once you use the ISBN, you would say, hey, that ISBN belongs to this book now, and register it there. And last but not least, I promise to talk about that barcode as well, because if you do go to Bowker, just to poke around even, you'll notice that they also sell barcodes. But what I want you to know is that this is not for authors. This is not our realm to worry about. Barcodes are on the retailer side of things. So I have never in my 8 years of publishing ever purchased a barcode, and I would encourage you not to either, because it would be a waste of money.
In this video, we're going to talk about why you might need or want a physical print copy of your book, also known as a proof copy or a paperback copy. And then I'm going to show you 3 different print-on-demand companies that you can use to make this proof copy and what I think of each of them. First of all, why would you need them? There are 3 different reasons that I found that I need or want a proof copy of my book. The first reason is, of course, to proofread or edit that book. And so I like to do this towards the end of my process, like the very final step, like an actual proofreading step. But you could also order your book as early as the first draft. If you just want to read and edit it in a different format, it's actually cheaper than ordering a book from Office Max, depending on which one of the options I show you that you go with. Of course, if you want to edit it that way that early on, you might not have a cover ready just yet, so I will also show you how you can make a temporary cover using KDP and some templates. The second reason that you might want a print company is so that you can make an ARC, which is an advanced reader copy, to give to someone else, like say other people who want to proofread for you, or for marketing purposes like book reviewers and that sort of thing. And then the third reason is to make an ARC, but specifically for giveaways. Actually, I would even add in like a 4th reason, which would be like if you want to just have your book in your hand for marketing purposes, like if you're not great at Photoshop and you can't like fake that you're holding your book and you want to actually hold your book for like pictures and videos and whatnot, then yeah, that would be a fantastic reason as well. If you're ordering a proof so that you can proofread or edit your book, then obviously you're going to care more about the interior. And if you're ordering it for like marketing purposes, you'll obviously care more about the exterior and the cover. And if you're ordering it for like ARCs and to like give to people as more of a final copy, then you're obviously going to care about both of those things. So it really depends on what you're wanting for which of these companies I'm going to talk about that you go with. So let's dive into the 3 different companies. I'm going to talk to you about KDP, which is an Amazon-owned company, and it recently merged with CreateSpace, if any of you are familiar with that. It is probably my #1 in most instances, but not necessarily when it comes to proofs. I'm also going to talk to you about INGRAMSPARK, and then I'm going to talk to you about Barnes & Noble Nook Press, which is a bit newer to me, but I have really enjoyed using it. So I just want to talk to you guys about the pros and cons of each and how it might influence your decision. Before I dive into each of the different platforms, I just want to say that I am not going to show you guys how to actually upload your book and go through the entire process for all three of these companies, because I already did that. I have a video on how to upload your book to KDP, which I will link below. And I also have a video all about how to upload your book to INGRAMSPARK, which I will link below as well. Those are both in my final steps to publishing playlist if you guys are curious. I have not done a video on how to upload to Barnes & Noble, Nook Press, but it's fairly self-explanatory. I'm brand new to it and I just follow the directions, so if you know how to follow directions, you'll be fine. But I'm going to go into this assuming that you can figure out the basics for how to set up your book on these different platforms, and I'm just going to show you the pros and cons of each one, and then I'm going to show you a couple ways that you can actually get a temporary cover for your book if you don't have one yet and you want to make a proof copy. All right, your first option for ordering proofs is Kindle Direct Publishing right here. And this is probably my favorite publishing or print-on-demand company most of the time, but in the case of proofs, not so much, and I will go into that in a second. So I'm, again, going to assume that you know how to upload a book, that you know to go to paperback and complete all the setup. And so we're going to start with, once your book is actually set up, there's these three little dots, so you have to complete the details, content, rights and pricing, etc., which I haven't done yet for the Stolen Kingdom at the time of this video. So I'm going to scroll down and let's use Evelyn's number. So on this book, you can see, because it is ready to go, that there's actually two options. There's request printed proofs and there is request author copies. So once your book is actually published, you will get the option to request author copies, which is your book at cost versus the price online that other people have to pay. This will not be an option until your book is actually published. Prior to publishing, you will only have this option. And while the author copies look exactly like the finished book, on KDP, the printed proofs have a long, gross bar across the front and back and spine that says, "Not for resale." And it's disgusting. It covers the entire cover and pretty much ruins absolutely every cover that ever existed. It's horrible. Everybody that I know hates it, and for whatever reason, there's no way around it at this time. They also, on the back, have a strange barcode that is different from when you get the author copy in the copies that go out into the world. They have a proof-only barcode, and it's placed in a different position. And they let you know all of this if you read the fine print, that it's just the proof barcode and it's unique to a proof. But it's still frustrating because it covers different parts of the book than the actual barcode covers. So just altogether, I am not impressed with the proofs on KDP. But if you are going to order one and you want to order one for maybe proofreading, not marketing purposes, basically, anything where you're more concerned about the interior and you just want to see how the book turns out. Once you click on the proof option, you're going to see that there's an order quantity, and the maximum that you can order is 5 ever at a time. So keep that in mind. Like, even if you don't care about the not for resale bar, maybe you want that because you want it to be really clear that it's not the final. Great, but you can still only order up to 5 at a time. So you're going to need to keep this in mind. I think you have to resubmit your book every time that you want to order another 5 copies. And unfortunately, that's not always ideal. And then there actually is a way to divide up the addresses. Like if you wanted to send 5 to 5 different people, you can do that on the Amazon ordering page. In general, that's just an Amazon thing that they'll allow you to split your order between addresses. So that's not a huge concern. And then it will show you the total cost for the book itself. This is not counting shipping and taxes, so it is going to be more expensive than that. Once you're ready to go and you're sure you want this, you're just going to click the submit proof request, and then you'll get an email once they approve it. Usually they say within 4 hours. It's pretty fast. And this is how you get a proof on KDP. Now, one thing I have noticed about KDP that's different from every other print-on-demand company is that they don't really care if your proof is perfect. They're most likely going to approve this proof, whether it looks good or not. So I got a proof where the words were almost chopped off on the side, but then when it came to actually publishing, the day of publishing, and submitting that same cover, they did not approve it and they were not okay with it. So this is not, unfortunately, the same as CreateSpace and INGRAMSPARK, where once it's approved, the book's good to go. It's really just you're going to get a copy and they're going to give you whatever you order. And so again, that's a downside, as well as the resale, not for resale, barcode, everything. So this is not my favorite way to order proofs, besides for proofreading. For proofreading, it's great because it's probably the easiest place to order a proof, and all the other options that I'm going to go over today are a little bit more difficult. So the next one I'm going to go over is INGRAMSPARK. This is my INGRAMSPARK page, and as you can see, the Stolen Kingdom is pending publisher approval. So I need to click into that. Again, I have a video on how to actually upload your book to INGRAMSPARK, so if you need help with that, go watch that video. I'm not going into it again today, but my goal here with INGRAMSPARK is to set up pre-orders. I really, really, really want to get the paperback pre-orders going before BookCon because I have some really cool flyers that are going to promote the pre-orders, and I would love it if it's more than just ebooks. So I am on deadline to get this going. My cover designer has not answered me. This is the final front cover, but I'm still waiting on the back and the spine, which is like the full wrap, as they call it. And she hasn't answered me in over a week, so I'm a little bit frustrated about that, but it is what it is. So I actually made a full cover wrap myself. It's crappy, but it will do the trick to let me complete pre-orders, which right now is my ultimate goal with this. And so I will show you in a second how to do that and make a wrap using KDP. But for right now, at least it can get pre-orders going, and that's what matters to me. So the proof has been generated. I'm going to take a look at that today, and then as soon as I approve it, this is when Lightning Spark, aka INGRAMSPARK, approves it, but now I have to go approve it myself, and so it's pending publisher approval. Once I do that, they're going to begin sending out all the information to the retailers, so like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Books Depository and all these great places are going to start getting information for how people can pre-order The Stolen Kingdom, which is so exciting. And so this is separate from ebook pre-orders. This is how I do my paperback pre-orders. But now let's go into how I'm actually going to order my paperback ARC, I believe, because I don't really know if I want to order from INGRAMSPARK. I've heard that Barnes & Noble Nook Press is really fast. So this, my friends, is Barnes & Noble Nook Press. So I am not actually selling books online through this. I am only using it for my ARCs. And this is my workaround for when I'm not ready to upload to INGRAMSPARK, but I also don't want to use KDP because of their stupid barcode across the front cover. So if I have, like, for instance, say I had a full cover wrap, but I wasn't ready to put my book on INGRAMSPARK just yet, then I could create a new book here, paperback or ebook, doesn't matter, and you can do it just for yourself to purchase, which is why this says personal here, or you could actually sell books through Barnes & Noble Nook Press as well. All I have to do, I've never done this before, you guys, I'm super excited, is just order it. Let's find out how much this actually costs though. I put in my shipping information and I chose the delivery option that would be just the simplest, the cheapest, which apparently is a lot more than I expected. So maybe this isn't rivaling INGRAMSPARK all that much. So it looked cheap. It looked like it was only $6, but then there is another $6.50 for the handling and shipping. So it is a total of about $14. All right, out of curiosity, I did decide to go and check out how much INGRAMSPARK would cost since the Barnes & Noble one was fairly expensive actually. KDP, by the way, is like usually under $10. If the book is a bit thicker, it might be around $10. You know, the most I've ever spent was like, oh gosh, maybe like $12 on a proof copy through KDP. So Barnes & Noble seemed expensive to me. Let's find out how much INGRAMSPARK is. How quickly would you like it ordered? It says usually prints within 5 business days. I automatically choose this option, which, as you can see, costs more than the Barnes & Noble book by itself, like fully, the shipping and the book itself. This is just shipping. So if I go to basic, what they're going to tell me, yes, if you select this method, we are not responsible for loss and or damage. So you have to accept that, number one, it's not trackable, not insurable, and once they send it out, they don't really care if it gets to you or not. I haven't had any issues with this yet, and I've always done basic, but of course, I wouldn't be surprised if something went wrong. The other thing that you'll notice is that because this book isn't published yet, it is like this yellow bar that makes you choose. You can click the override on sale date, which is what I need to do if I want to get this book anytime soon. Let's scroll down here, and we've got a handling fee of $2, Subtotal is $7.59 plus the shipping. So our total is $11.39. So it turns out that it really does depend on which shipping option you choose. If you're willing to take the risk, INGRAMSPARK is slightly cheaper. And of course, that's not counting, you know, uploading the book itself, which is $50. So let's be realistic here. This is only an option if you're wanting to do pre-orders. If you're wanting to just get an ARC copy, definitely don't recommend that, because this would actually be $61.39 counting that uploading fee. All right, so I'm gonna return to my bookshelf on KDP and show you guys how to make a book cover. And good news, KDP helps you with all of these things. It is so amazing, which is why I always recommend that new authors start with KDP, because this is the most friendly to self-publishing by far. But let's go ahead and click on the creating your own cover. And you're gonna find that in the cover creator, they actually have templates right here for paperback. And so you can select the size of the book that you want. You can tell them how many pages you have in it, which actually is super important for the spine. So make sure that you are putting in the page count for the book that you're actually going to order and get that solidified before you download a template. And then you can even pick the color paper, which, you know, heck if I know if that matters at all. But I downloaded this template for a 5 by 8 inch book, which is what I wanted to order. And then I went through and I had to click the, where is it? Edit PDF button, and then you can actually go and change all of this. So I deleted most everything. First I put in my front cover, then I started deleting things, then I put in the spine info and this info, and then I finished deleting everything, because as you can see in this little box below, it says turn off the guidelines, because everything that's in there is going to show. Whatever is visible in digital artwork will also be visible in your printed artwork. So I created this super lame full cover wrap, so that basically this front cover looks realistic for INGRAMSPARK, and then literally I told you guys it's so basic and I could have done more. I have a little experience on Canva, so I considered just making something simple on Canva for this and something for the spine and overlapping them. And if my cover designer doesn't get back to me soon, maybe I will. I'm going to give her a couple more days, because this is just so I can upload to INGRAMSPARK. And I use this template not only for over here on Kindle Direct Publishing, but I also use it for Barnes & Noble and INGRAMSPARK, and both other companies accepted it. So I think this template is actually really awesome, you guys. KDP has such great information for self-published authors. I can't recommend them enough. You don't want to use the template if that's too confusing, or you just don't have like the Adobe Acrobat DC that I use. And so you're not able to do that. You can also use, on KDP at least, the cover creator. So I was uploading a cover I already had, but let's check out using the cover creator instead. And so this is going to literally give you very limited options, but it will do it for you, which is really nice. So as you can see here, I picked a really basic design when I was playing with this, just to see if I liked it, which actually I like it better than the one that I made with the template, because I like the black and I like the font choices and the way that they placed an image here, which I think is supposed to be an author photo, but whatever. So I really like that because it's actually a little bit more correctly placed, but when I clicked preview and I took a picture of it, it just wasn't quite up to par for putting it on INGRAMSPARK. So you definitely could create a cover within here, try to upload it to Barnes & Noble. So what I did is I just took a screenshot of this and I tried it, but it didn't quite fit the cover. As you can see, the spine is a little wonky, and actually I believe the spine starts right about here, so there was this black bar. So anyway, I ended up going with the template, but you can start by choosing a design, and I chose obviously this one. And because it's only one picture that I uploaded, it's putting it in the middle, but they actually, like if you jump into this before you've uploaded a picture, it will show you what designs look like without any picture. And they have not that many. It's pretty limited, but they have some that, as you can see, are just like a very simple background, pretty cheesy, pretty lame. Like I really wouldn't recommend it. If you're going to do this, you could at least go into the website Canva and make like a pretty front cover so that you could choose a design where you have a front cover image in there already. And then you would just add your blurb, and I put in just like connect with me here, and the title and my name. But you honestly can do whatever you want, because in this instance, you're probably ordering a proof just for the sake of ordering a proof. All right, let's summarize. So KDP is the cheapest option by far. They have templates that are built in. They're super user-friendly. So that's the upside. But then the downside is it has these obnoxious not for resale bars across every single proof. There's no way to get around this. So not for resale, and it covers usually kind of a crucial part. Like it goes around the whole thing, spine, front and back, and it's just super dang ugly. So this is horrible for marketing purposes. I personally can't stand it looking at it in general, but it's useful for actually proofreading. So you'll notice that if I hold this up close, you can see all my proofreading notes within this book. I would say this is fantastic for proofreading and editing, and it's actually cheaper to order through KDP than to print your book at Office Max. So why not, right? So then let's go to INGRAMSPARK, which is the second cheapest option if you're willing to take the risk that we talked about with shipping. Otherwise, it is by far the most expensive option if you choose the shipping that they want you to choose, and especially if you count the uploading fee, which I do. So that makes it actually over $50 more than both of the other options, and therefore the most expensive by far. So that's a huge negative there. However, a huge positive is that, of course, it allows you to do paperback pre-orders as long as you don't mind paying to upload twice. It's hard to say how I feel about this, honestly. I think for me, it ends up being worth it. I would actually, if I only chose between INGRAMSPARK and KDP, I would choose to use INGRAMSPARK for proofs, for anything marketing purposes, for any gifts and giveaways, for book reviewers, etc., because this bar is pretty much a deal breaker for me. Sorry, KDP, but you got to get rid of that. Like if they didn't have this bar, I would definitely choose KDP first, but that leads to the last one, Barnes & Noble. It is more expensive than I expected, but you don't have to pay for uploading it like you do with INGRAMSPARK, and they seem to be okay with crappy covers, which, as I showed you guys, I made a really crappy cover just to test it out, and as long as your text doesn't go too far out into the margins where there's like a danger zone and they'll let you know, they seem to be fine with it. So I would say that if I wanted ARCs and I wasn't ready to upload to INGRAMSPARK, I wasn't ready to pay the fee, and I wasn't ready to set up, pre-orders or any of that, I would definitely use Barnes & Noble above the other two because it seems like it's a beautiful book.
It's day one of proofreading. I don't have time to put on makeup and look cute for you guys because I need to finish reading this guy in 3 days, or at least I'm gonna try. So once again, I figured this is something I'm doing for the release, and I know people have questions about it and are interested, so I thought I'd bring you guys along for the journey. It's gonna be a little bit vlog style as I go through it, but also I will give you some steps that I specifically do. I have a really specific process, and so hopefully you'll have some fun takeaways from how I proofread my books before release day. Everything I'm about to tell you, feel free to take it or leave it, because I do have a really specific process, very unique to me, that I have developed over, what is this, book 10 now, I think? Anyway, the first step is to figure out how fast I can read this, because it really helps to proofread the book like a reader and get it fast, to read it at the same pace you would read a normal book. And I tend to, when I start normal books, I tend to literally not put them down until I'm done. But also I am on a very tight schedule because how do I say this? I just didn't get things done as quickly as I should have in the past, and I'm paying for it now. Because I want to be able to input all the changes that I might need to make in here and submit the final book to all 5 vendors by Friday, and it's Monday today, I have decided that I want to try to read in 3 days, and then have Thursday to make the changes, and then Friday to submit the book everywhere. So my first step is going to be to divide the page count, which is 367 pages at the moment, and I'm going to divide that by 3. Let's do it right now. See if I can do this backwards. 368 pages divided by 3. So roughly 122 pages a day. And then I'm gonna say, this is definitely a guessing game here because I don't really know how long that's gonna take me to read this many pages. I should know that, but I have no idea. Let's say roughly 4 hours. It might take way longer because proofreading is way more intensive than actual reading. Obviously, you're really paying close attention and you might need to take breaks and whatnot, but let's say 4 hours. So I'm gonna divide it again by 4. Looks like 30 pages an hour. Ooh, I don't know if that's doable. We'll find out. I think I might even put little sticky notes in here to give myself little mile markers. Let's do that. I have a very cute cameo of a potato here. Okay. So here's what I've got every 30 or so pages, roughly. Oh, it's so crooked. All right, so this is day 1, this is day 2, and this is day 3. I don't know if this is going to annoy me or if this will be helpful, but we'll see. Every book, my process is a little bit different, but I usually like to make use of all white space. So I will literally use the front cover page and the back cover page for things like timeline tracking, and sometimes I've used it for kind of story Bible elements, like let's keep track of this and remember everything. I am literally going to proofread every single page, including, you know, copyrights and title page and just legit everything. And I'm going to take my red pen out and mark up absolutely everything that needs to change and go. And then I like to put a little check mark at the bottom of the page once I've completed it and it looks good. Once I've gone through the entire book and I've checked every single page, the next step is actually to transfer all of those notes and changes into my document. And so as I do that, this is super detailed, but I'll take a yellow highlighter and highlight each of those little red marks once I have made the change to let myself know that I actually completed that change, because usually you don't do this all in one sitting. You'll have to take breaks and you don't want to forget what you have and haven't done. So I will literally mark every single change as I make it with a highlighter. And then last but not least, I'll go over all my notes in the front and back of the book that I have made for the timeline or anything else, characters, big changes, blah, 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 anything that I needed to make notes about, and just review that I've covered all my bases. Forgot to mention this, but I also will always make a new fresh document with a new fresh title when I'm doing my proofread, so that when I re-upload it to the vendor site, they don't see it as the same title and then they don't make the updates, because KDP at least will do that. I don't know about the others, but you want to make sure that the updates are actually put into effect, and to do that you need to have a new file name just so that the computer can differentiate that this is something new. The last step, of course, is then going to be to upload that new file with all the proofreading changes into your print-on-demand company so that they have the final file. And that's my method, but let's see how it actually goes. On to the vlog part of this video. A few of you have asked me for actual specific examples of proofreading, so I'm going to try to give you some without sharing too much of the story. So sometimes it'll be for things like consistency. Like, for example, I knew that the main door of the library being out of sight, I was pretty sure there was another spot on the next couple pages where I would need to double check that that was accurate, so I can leave myself little notes like this. Or sometimes there's things that are what are called echoes, where there's the same exact word or a very similar word that's used very close together and it makes it sound repetitive. So in this line it says, it revealed the last few shelves of a dusty bookshelf. So I thought I could make it the last few shelves of a dusty bookcase instead. Right now I am reading right here and I had a couple good examples. So let me zoom in And here's another example of an echo. So I was trying to figure out how to do it. Used to use it myself. I used to have it myself. Could work there. Or up here, it fell flat. And on the very same page, she says something flatly. So this is the type of stuff that you don't necessarily notice when you are reading, but you're like, okay, maybe I should work on that. Very tiny details, something like this. I sank deeper into the wall and closed my eyes. Well, you can't actually sink into a wall. So sometimes it's just finding something that's a little bit more accurate. And usually I would obviously do this during further back edits, but this is when I missed. And I was like, you know what? I'm thinking about this a little harder. I prefer that it would be I sank back against the wall instead. Or another great example would be a contraction. Usually I'm pretty good at catching my contractions where you write it out like this and I already have them like here already contracted, but in this case it had cut me off from my abilities and myself in ways I'd never imagined. It's easier to just make it the contraction, and I usually try to do that in general because it reads less formal and more natural. So those are a few examples of how I've been proofreading, and as you can see, I am only this far and I technically should be here today. So it's definitely taking longer than expected, as all editing does, to be honest. I feel like I almost never ever judge how long it's going to take me to edit correctly, but once I get to the end and I'm ready to start inputting my notes, I'll come back and show you how I go through all of these and I go ahead and input all of these changes. And so I'll talk to you guys again very soon. All right, it is day 3 and I am right here. I've only gotten through day 1. So you guys know I have a deadline. So today is going to be crunch time. I'm literally going to read the other half of the book. I'm basically halfway. I'm not even halfway. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing today. All right, I finished proofreading all of this last night around 2 a.m. So it took me 4 days instead of 3, but then it occurred to me that 3 days is how long I gave myself for the Curse Hunter, which was half the size of this guy. So really, I read it really fast. I should have given myself 6 days. But anyway, I take big picture notes in the front. In the back, I did timeline notes, which I don't want to show you too closely. And then it ended up turning into more of a chapter summary with timeline. And so I had this page, this page, this page, and this page. So it ended up being good that I had an accidental extra page in there. This is actually way less marked up than previous drafts, but I still wrote myself a lot of notes. I made this little page for you guys. Let me see if I can show it all. And I know I showed a few of these already, but let me show you a few more that have come up since the last time I showed you. Deleting stuff, even if it's really small, like instead of winking over at Adele, I just put winking at Adele. This is actually pretty good that this was the first typo. It says, I can't find the key. So it was supposed to be just, I can't find the key. Seeing your book in a different format like this, you catch stuff like that. I also made notes throughout this when I would catch a fun quote that I thought would be fun to share for marketing purposes, like this one and this one and this one and this one. Sometimes it's also like word spacing like that. I think there's too many spaces right there. So just checking that. And then the last thing I like to do, which I kind of pointed out already with this timeline, and sometimes I do it separate, sometimes I do it together. So with the timeline, I ended up just doing chapter summaries and timelines together. But I literally write out what happens in that chapter and I summarize it with like a line or two like this. But right now I'm mostly checking for the sake of timeline issues because there's a lot of complicated timelines in this book that I haven't had in other books, where it's one character is on their own timeline and then the other two are on a different timeline, and it's like back and forth, and at the end they merge together and they're on the same timeline. So I just need to make sure it's all snazzy. All right, so the second step is I'm going to start putting all these changes into my computer. Baby, take me back. I'm 2/3. Found out for the first time this runs out at 100 minutes. It starts over, or 100 minutes. So I switched to this, which is still running. Whoops. And I'm exactly at an hour. Let's see. So that is a little over 2.5 hours. So I think I have maybe an hour left, and I'm so sore right now. All right, let's keep going. Hopefully we'll be done by 7 o'clock.
Why don't we go back to Wanted to end it like we did. I guess shit happens for a reason. But it's like something feels different from back then. Why don't we go back to? Why don't we go back to? Honestly, I'm open wide.
Oh my gosh, the lighting is so bad, but it is 7:10 and I have just finished almost exactly 2 hours plus 100 minutes earlier, so just a little over 3.5 hours to put all of this in here. So let me show you now because it's going to be a very different look. Ready for this? I don't know if you're going to be able to tell. You see all that yellow? Yeah. And it's very detailed work because it's not like they're hard changes. It's literally just checking, do I have an extra space here? Do I want to try to find a different word there? It's very, very small stuff. And then I marked a few more possible quotes on the bottom, although I have a bunch saved in a document already. And then at the very top here, I've got a little sticky to fix the second map in the book. So I'm going to do that right now. Print it out so I can take a picture of it for Instagram tomorrow, because why not? I'll give you a little sneak peek of the map here on the screen when I finish it. I will share a little fun sneak peek picture, but essentially I am done. That is my proofreading process. So if you have any other questions about proofreading, let me know, but hopefully that kind of clears it up where it is supposed to be, you know, the final pass before you publish your book. It's supposed to be, you've done the really detailed edits before, and this is hopefully just catching last minute things, but of course, I am super picky, and so if I see something, I change it, which means that I actually did add a tiny, tiny little paragraph. You're not supposed to do that when you get to the proofreading stage, but this is not the first time that I've done that. So everybody's process is different. Don't judge me. If you judge me, I don't really care. Submitting the final files of your book is exactly the same as when you first uploaded, but with one crucial difference that could result in the wrong files getting published if you don't know about it. And that is that for most of these print-on-demand companies that we work with, especially KDP, the file name has to change or they don't make any changes on the book itself. For example, let's say every time I uploaded The Stolen Kingdom, I just had the file say The Stolen Kingdom, then the file that was uploaded would not actually change at all, even if it was supposed to be different. If you're tensing up and you're wondering, wait a minute, does that mean that even when I upload a final file, the readers are going to get the first draft? If the file name's the same, the answer is yes. The good news is that a lot of these print-on-demand companies don't require you to upload a dummy file or a placeholder file anymore, so you could potentially get all the way to the end of the process and not upload any book files at all until you have the final file. But there are other companies like INGRAMSPARK where that's not necessarily the case. And honestly, even if you did upload what you think is the final file, there are a lot of instances where you might go, oh wait, I forgot to add, you know, this section in the back, or something in the copyrights page, or maybe a bigger detail that you need to add last minute, or even after you've published, you can make changes as well. And so you need to know that those changes are not going to actually be implemented unless the file name is different. The way to manage this but not get super confused by all these different book file names is to come up with a sort of naming system. And honestly, I've done some very basic things, like just put the number 1 in front of the book title's name. It can be that simple. So I might upload, you know, number 2, The Stolen Kingdom. Number 3, The Stolen Kingdom. Number 4, The Stolen Kingdom, as I work my way through any changes. However, another awesome method that I've used occasionally, especially after I've published a book, is to use the date of the update. So for example, today's date is December 22nd. So I might put something like 12/22/24, The Stolen Kingdom. That way I know when I look at it that I have the most up-to-date file and that it was actually published, and I can be confident of that. When it comes to your filing names towards the end, you will also very likely have 2 separate files for the ebook and the paperback, or maybe also for the hardcover. And so I typically will have, like, again, the date or maybe just the number. So it might say something like 12/20/24, The Stolen Kingdom, ebook version. Something like that. Or because I've gone through so many different files of this book at this point and, you know, added new covers, it might say something like 34, The Stolen Kingdom, paperback version, new cover edition, or something like that. And then of course, hopefully this goes without saying, but that whole file name issue where it needs to change for the company to actually recognize that there's something new here and update it also applies to the cover files, not just the interior files. Okay, you're all set. Let's talk about copyrights. Let's talk about copywriting your book. The first question is, do you even have to? Honestly, no. In the US, your book is copyrighted from the moment that you write it. So here in the US at least, when people talk about copywriting, what they're actually referring to is filing your book with the US Copyright Office so that you legally have proof that you wrote it. The most common instance where you're going to need a copyright is if somebody steals your book, aka pirates it. They might pirate it to go on their own website and they're just giving it away for free there somehow, or they might pirate it and actually try to sell it as their own work on a legitimate, print-on-demand company like KDP, for example. These are both really, really awful instances, obviously. But the problem is having your copyright filed legally doesn't always do a whole lot. So for example, when it comes to the pirating websites, you can absolutely reach out to them, email them and say, take this down, I have the copyrights. Maybe they'll listen, maybe they won't. You actually have to realize that to enforce your copyright, of course you have it, but to actually enforce it, you would have to hire a lawyer in some cases to go and deal with this person. And that's very expensive, and not a lot of authors actually have the money to do that. Maybe a better way to say this would be, like, if they're pirating your book, they already know it belongs to you. They already know you have the copyright. They're just choosing to ignore it, unfortunately. But what about the instance where they pirate your book and they try to actually sell it on like a company that you can protest it, like Amazon, for example? You would think that actually having this legal filing paperwork would benefit you very much. But I've heard of at least one author, when they told KDP, hey, I have the copyright paperwork, here it is, KDP still ignored them and took down their original book and allowed the pirated book to stay up, which is just blows my mind, honestly. And I don't know the end of that story. I was never able to find the book and figure out if it was resolved, but it sounded like that author had to fight really, really hard, and that having that paperwork did not necessarily benefit them right away. Hopefully it did eventually. Hopefully they found somebody who listened and was like, oh yeah, that's legal copyright information. Of course it's your book. But even in worst case scenarios, sometimes it's like, is it even worth it to spend the money to actually enforce that copyright? Still, knowing all of that, I can totally and completely understand if having a copyright gives you peace of mind, because at least you have that option, if you ever needed it, to use that legal paperwork and prove, yes, I am the author of this. And it's not super expensive, but it has gone up from $55 to $65, I believe, in the US at least. So just keep that in mind. In the end, it's a really personal decision, right? But if you do want to copyright your book, it's actually not super difficult. It's probably a 15-minute process, and again, roughly $65 at this point in time. So if you live in the US, you would go to copyright.gov. You would choose the register your work option. Then you would have to set up an account, and within that account, you would choose a literary work. They actually have video tutorials there to show you how to go through all the steps, and you can follow the prompts, and it should be pretty straightforward. If you run into any questions, definitely watch their video tutorials, and I believe they have some articles as well. But there are 3 quick things I wanted to share from my experience. And the first one is that there are a lot of different places where you're going to put in your address, and in some of those places, your address would be public. And so you might want to use a P.O. box. But in other places, they will very clearly say that you are not allowed to use a P.O. box. So just keep that in mind. You can actually use a UPS box, or you could potentially use a company like, I think, Inkfile I used once, very briefly, to kind of bypass having my personal address be on a public website for other people to access. But again, there's multiple places you're going to put in an address, and so just read really carefully where this address is going, what they need it for, and what kind of address it can be, just to make sure you're on the right page. And again, this might just be me being paranoid, but I just wanted to mention that in case you want to maybe protect yourself and protect your privacy that way. The second thing I wanted to bring up is that you're going to want to do your final files, not partially finished files. Please do not file copyright for your first draft or your second draft or something like that, because as soon as you change the book, the copyright no longer covers those changes. So you want to wait until you have your final book files. And I should also mention that you are uploading all the files for the book at the same time. Everything that you want to be covered by the copyright, including the cover, including maybe if you have a map in the front, for example. And some authors might only include the book itself, like the chapters, but I personally include the entire book file because I wrote the acknowledgements page and all those other pages as well. Like, that's all my work, if that makes sense. And then the last thing you should know about copyrights is that it takes forever. So they say online that it's roughly 3 to 9 months for your copyrights to be processed. And then you'll get something in the mail typically that says legally you have the rights to this, and that is your legal documentation that you'll want to store somewhere safe and hold on to if you ever needed it. And that's copyrights. If you're feeling overwhelmed right now, just know, first of all, that's totally normal. Self-publishing is so complicated. But also I want you to know that you can come back to this video at any time. I'm going to include chapters so you can kind of skip to the sections that you want a refresher on if you ever need one. But there is a good chance that you still have a lot of questions, because honestly, despite how many hours and hours and hours of time and effort I've put into this video series, there's still so much more to know about self-publishing. So if you want to dive deeper into these topics and a lot of other topics related to self-publishing and get some free downloadables and templates and a workbook and all that goodness, then yes, I do have a self-publishing course. It's on Udemy. I will link it below if you want to check it out, where I go way more in depth on all of these topics and so many more. I'll put the link to that in the description and in the comment box below. And just FYI, it very frequently goes on sale for just $10 or $15 depending on Udemy and whatever little elves they have working behind the scenes. I don't know. But even if you're just curious, definitely go check out to see what was not covered here, to read the awesome testimonials, and just see if it's a good fit for you. Whew. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this free masterclass, over 6 hours of helpful content. I hope it was super valuable to you. And if you want to give back in a free way to help me out, just give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment. Those are really, really helpful. YouTube loves to see that. And subscribe if you're interested in more videos like this in the future. Oh, and definitely share with your author friends, because that also really, really helps me out. Thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing time self-publishing. You've got this.